Can we ask the committee secretary to acknowledge our guests?
Good morning, Honorable Chairman Senator Angara and Senator Win Gatchalian. For today's hearing, our guests are as follows. Dr. Carl Kenrick Chua, Undersecretary of Department of Finance, together with Director Juby Danopratap, the Research and Information Department of DOF. To represent the Bureau of Internal Revenue, we have Deputy Commissioner Nestor Valeroso, together with Attorney Yubimil Nina Asuncion of the Legal and Legislative Division. Representing the National Tax Research are Mr. Donaldo Boo of the Direct Taxes, together with Ms. Roselyn Domo of Supervising Tax Specialist. To represent the Bureau of Customs is Attorney Nisi Encinas of the Bureau Action Against Smugglers. Representing the Department of Trade and Industry is Attorney Lester Olimpo of the Investment Specialist of the Board of Investment, together with Director Jerry Clavicillas of the Bureau of Small and Medium Enterprises Development. To represent the Philippine Statistics Authority is Attorney Cecilia Misola of the Legal Services. Representing the Land Registration Authority is Attorney Joseph Dimaiyakan, the Chief of the Land Registration Cases. To represent the City Assessor of the Manila City is Ms. Maria Ana Asuncion Alfonso of the Local Assessment Operation Office. From the experts and stakeholders from the private sector, we have Attorney Maria Lourdes Lim, the President of the Tax Management Association of the Philippines. From the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, we have its Chairman of the National Affairs, Mr. Eduardo Yap. Representing the League of Provinces of the Philippines is Ms. Angelica Sanchez, the Head Policy Development Unit. From the SGB, we have Attorney Jules Riego, partners of SGB. Representing the Isla Lipana and Company, we have its chairman and senior partner, Attorney Alexander B. Cabrera, together with Attorney Marie Cristel Bertudes, the Assistant Tax Manager. From the Subdivision and Housing Development Association, its National President, Mr. Christopher Narciso, as an observer, assisted by Mr. Roy Conrad Gali, the Legislative Assistant. From the Philippine Rural Construction Movement, we have a professor from the Labor and Industrial Relations of UP Diliman, Ms. Rebecca Gadi. Representing the Jerry Roas Foundation, we have Attorney Sophia Ko, the Corporate Secretary. And from the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we have Attorney William Enrile. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Comsec Dasil. Any initial remarks? We'd also like to acknowledge the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Drilon. Any remarks from the senators before we give the floor to our guests? Can we ask maybe the Yusek Chua of the DOF to give us a brief summary of, well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we're tackling the estate and donors tax. I think it's the second or third hearing on that. The proposed lowering to 6% to make it uniform with the capital gains and transfer taxes. And the changes to the self-employed and the professionals' income tax. No? We hope Dr. Chu is not leaving us for showbiz after his appearance on Boy Abunda's The Bottom Line. But can we ask him to give us a summary of the changes, especially for the professionals, given the new thresholds?
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair, Senator Angara, Mr. Minority Leader, Senator Drilon, Senator Gatchalian. Rest assured I will not leave for showbiz. I have 5 more packages to present and hopefully for the Senate to consider. I would like to first give a background. We originally designed the estate and donors tax as part of Package 3, which is about property taxation. Just to recap, Package 1, which is now being deliberated and passed by the House last May 31, is about taxes that individuals will face. So the decline in the personal income tax, the broadening of the VAT base, the increase in the automobile and the oil excise. Package 2 is about corporate income taxation and fiscal incentives. Package 3 is about property taxation. Package 4 is the capital income or passive or financial taxes. And Package 5 will be the set of health, environment, and luxury taxation. However, we also do not object if the House or the Senate will advance some of the provisions. That is why the estate and donors tax in the House bill were included in the approved House Bill 5636. And because of that, we also submitted to the Senate, which the Senate President filed as Senate Bill 1408, the inclusion of the estate and donors tax. Apart from these two taxes that we generally support with just minor changes from the ones proposed by some congressmen and senators, we also are supporting the estate tax amnesty. The very reason why we support the reduction in the estate tax and together with it the donors tax is we believe that first we have to find ways to improve the efficiency of our property or land market. There are many idle lands that we believe are not transferred, which could be better used for investment, job creation, and poverty reduction. The rate of 6% was derived after much consultation to basically align with the capital gains so that in the end we would not have to have concerns about arbitrage between or among those who would like to sell a property, donate a property, or transfer because of death. And we are basically seeing the 6% flat rate as a very, on the overall picture, quite progressive and would have a strong impact on development. Although we are reducing the rate from as high as 15% for donors tax and 20% for the estate tax to 6%, that will of course entail a loss, but the BIR also well know that many of the rich already have planned their estates such that they do not contribute much. And it is really the middle class and some of the lower middle class that are affected. So we believe that the reduction of the estate tax, while leading to an immediate reduction in the revenue, will facilitate job creation and investment because land will be put to better use and will generate indirectly income and value-added tax and other local business taxes. That is the reason why we mainly support. And because we are reducing the rate significantly, we do not see any need to have similar or rather numerous exemptions. That is why in our proposal, we do not think that there is now a need to itemize or to have additional deduction for funeral and medical. However, we propose that the standard deduction be increased from 1 million to 1.25 million in the DOF and the Senate President's bill, and that would incorporate already some of the funeral and medical expense. And the only item that we increase rather significantly is the family home from 1 million to 3 million. Beyond, there are many calls to exempt the whole family home, but we do not think this is progressive because a lot of the homes, and given the scarcity of land, are driven not by hard work but by speculation or the increase in market valuation. So we think that overall we can live with much simpler estate tax. Some people have concern that by reducing the estate tax, we are actually making the tax system very pro-rich, or because those who have estate will benefit. However, as I mentioned, even as we speak, the rich already do estate planning significantly, and only the poor are the ones affected. And in the similar sense, other countries would have already moved to an annual recurring tax on property, so the real property tax, as a basis for improving the equity of wealth taxation, rather than waiting for someone to die to collect such tax, which is rather very small. In the same manner, the donors tax is being reduced to align to the estate tax. Mr. Chair, may I stop here?
Sorry, Yusek, is the DOF proposing a similar national real estate tax in any of the packages?
We are actually in Package 3, supportive of the National Valuation Act, which I believe Senator Lacson has filed. There are just very few changes, but the idea here is many LGUs...
No new impositions aside from...
No,
Because the Valuation Act just requires people to raise their
valuation.
valuation and
Yes.
assessment
The
level.
right to impose the rate is left to the LGUs. However, we think that to make the valuation more accurate and professional done, it would be proposed by the LGUs and approved at the national level so that it can be aligned. It will also align all the various valuation systems that we have, the zonal valuation, the schedule of market values, and so on.
How about the professionals, Yusek? Well, Senator Gatchalian is very concerned about the estate tax because of the sizable estate involved. But could you tell us a little bit about the changes in the DOF positions? Because I understand the House also made its own changes on the
okay, if I may summarize,
income tax provisions.
there are currently, well, apart from the different bills of various senators, there are 4 major versions. First is the original in the National Internal Revenue Code, then the DOF, the House, and the Senate as proposed by Senate President Pimentel. On the rates, from the graduated of 5 to 20%, all 3 proposals, the DOF, the House,
Talking about
and
estate,
the
no? Estate. No,
yes.
I was asking already about the professionals. I think we can move on from the estate.
Sure.
Because it's not the first hearing, Yusek, on estate. But it's the first hearing on the
flat
House
tax.
bill and the professionals tax. So
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people here who are concerned, around the table, who are concerned about that one.
Yes, Mr. Chair, let me then clarify that on the tax for self-employed and professional, the current system is to treat them like individuals, so a graduated rate. In the DOF proposal, we actually maintained that graduated system so that professionals will also benefit from the same tax regime as wage earners. However, there have been a lot of concern going around the country about the ease of self-employed and professionals paying, because they have to not only pay a quarterly income tax and declare them, they also have to pay their percentage tax quarterly. Or if they choose to be under the VAT system, so that they can credit their input VAT, pay the monthly VAT, and file quarterly. And apart from that, there is also the business tax. Similar to what other countries do, we propose an optional flat tax of 8% on gross sales. 8%, Mr. Minority Leader. 8% on gross sales or gross receipts. And the computation is based on the following. 3% is the percentage tax, the existing percentage tax that a non-VAT registered taxpayer will have to pay. And the 5% is the average effective tax rate that the self-employed pay as a share of their gross income, gross sales or gross receipt. That is why it is 8%. Now, in the House version, because of concern about rampant tax evasion among self-employed and professionals, given that they pay only, contribute only as low as 20% of all individual taxes collected, whereas their income is almost half that of self-employed, similar to this wage earners, the House mandates, the House bill that was passed mandates that all self-employed and professional below the VAT threshold of 3 million must pay the 8%. So it is mandatory compared to the DOF proposal that it be optional. And
can you repeat the House version?
okay.
Below 3 million.
Self-employed and professional whose gross sales or gross receipts are below 3 million are mandated to pay the 8% flat tax on gross sales or gross receipt in lieu of the income and the percentage tax.
And what deductions is he allowed?
The deduction is the standard 250,000.
Just the
deduction.
250. No more.
50, no.
No OSD. No OSD. No.
No more, because
Okay.
it is in lieu of the income and the percentage.
Mhm.
However,
for above 3 million.
Yes. For those above 3 million gross sales or gross receipts, they will be treated like corporations. They will pay the 30% corporate income tax on net income and the VAT, and they can avail of the optional standard deduction of 40% on gross income. That is the House version.
Can I ask a question?
Supportive of the House version, Senator Dulon. Senator Dulon, yeah.
don't you find that a little bit more complicated? Why don't you just make it a simple, you know, your proposal is 8% flat tax on gross receipts is for professionals,
Yes.
regardless of the amount. Otherwise, you know, the tendency here is try to keep your income 3 million and below. So what's your view of the House version?
Mr. Chair, we have sent our objection to the House version for equity reasons. Our preference is that the individuals will be treated as individuals because of all the tax provisions that we have. The individual income tax is one of the most progressive feature, which we think should be maintained.
So schedular pa rin.
Schedular
For
pa rin.
3M and above or even for the 3M and below? 3M and above.
For those above and below. However, for those below, we recognize that the complexity of the tax administration makes it difficult for them to comply. That is why we propose an optional 8% that they can choose. Should they choose
Optional 8% for those earning below 3 million?
correct.
I see. And for the beyond 3 million, it's flat
The-
tax of 8%.
No, the regular schedule
Yeah.
for the based on the DOF proposal.
Which is,
Well, it is the
Graduated?
the graduated all the way to 35%. It is also good to keep it that way because many are mixed income earners. Some have wage, but they also have sideline
Right,
self-employed.
right.
So that is why we prefer to maintain the DOF proposed graduated or schedular income tax system with the option to avail of the 8% if they are below the VAT threshold to simplify their compliance.
So automatic, no option for the above 3 million. That's your position.
No option because that if we give them the option, that will also affect the progressivity. We are mindful of that, Mr. Chair.
But I thought the option was already in lieu as an administrative measure.
Only for those, Mr. Chair, below the 3 million because of their ability to comply.
But why not come up with an optional also for the professionals? An option where it's easier to comply off the top.
Well, for those above 3 million, we think that the solution there is really to review the processes in BIR. For instance, the number of forms and submissions that they have. So we think that they are more able to comply because of the resources. Also, we have in the House bill adjusted the requirements when certified or not certified, a certified CPA certification is needed to submit the financial statements, for instance.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Senator Joe.
I think you will be meeting the same administrative difficulties insofar as providing for a graduated rate beyond 3 million. That is the present rate, if
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Present system is that it's graduated.
Yes.
And the reform that you're proposing is that allow a flat rate of 8% for those earning or those with income not exceeding 3 million.
Correct.
Is that correct
Yes,
now?
sir.
I think at the end of the day, you'll be having the same difficulties administratively. And therefore, your desire to increase your collection from self-employed or professional payers will not improve because they'll find every way of, legitimately increasing the deductible expenses. If you apply the flat rate across the board, have you studied this?
Yes, sir.
Have you studied applying a flat rate across the board without any 3 million as a benchmark?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Minority Leader, we have indeed studied various proposals. When we designed the tax policy reform, we basically had to balance the three principles: the efficiency, the equity, and the simplicity. Admittedly, as you proposed, Mr. Minority Leader, a flat rate across the board would simplify a lot the administration. However, one of our underlying motive for proposing the tax reform is to preserve the progressivity of the tax system, which we think might be seriously affected. That is why it is a difficult balancing act for us. And we have decided in the end from the administration side to improve the systems in BIR, but at the same time allowing the taxpayer the option to improve their compliance through the the optional 8%.
For
Again,
decades, we've been trying to improve the system in the BIR.
With the indulgence of Senator Drilon, you know, you mentioned earlier in your remarks that the 5% is the effective tax rate paid by self-employed and professionals.
Correct.
So the 8% would actually be above the average.
No, because they also must pay the 3% percentage tax. So that is the parang offsetting. Another option, Mr. Chair, Mr. Minority Leader, the 5% is actually an average. There will be winners and losers depending on their cost structure.
Your concern is progressivity.
Yes.
Progressivity.
Yes. In fact, the underlying concern of our tax system when we estimated the revenues and proposed is that we do not want to see the measures of progressivity.
But again, like as Senator Drilon mentioned, progressivity is a theoretical justice. It's a concern about justice and equity. But experience might tend to point us another way in terms of low compliance.
That is certainly.
Do we want to move towards a system of greater self-enforcement or voluntary compliance? Is that given capacities?
Yes. In fact, that is also an underlying concern. By providing, well, in our opinion, humble opinion, by providing the small taxpayers the option to choose between two systems, the flat rate or the graduated, that may encourage some improvement in compliance. Well, of course, I understand BIR would not necessarily have a better administrative handle because of the two-track system.
Yeah, Senator Drilon, any other remarks?
In other jurisdictions where a flat rate system is enforced, how are the professionals treated, and what is the rate?
Well,
Can you give us some few examples?
The one I personally know is Russia. They have a 13% flat rate, and that, of course, improved the administration of the tax. However, at that time, when Russia transitioned from communist to more democratic or capitalistic society, their inequality is far lower. I think the Gini is around 30% compared to ours, almost 40 to 50. So in a sense, their concern about equity was not a major one. However, in our country, a sari-sari store compared to a very rich accountant will have very vast incomes.
Well, in theory, that's correct, except that when you look at the results, that theory is not supported. You mentioned Russia. What about in our neighboring countries? Which system would impose a tax, a flat rate on gross receipts?
Mr. Chair, our data show that our neighbors all follow the graduated system. I think the flat rate is more evident in former communist countries. Based on my research.
What about Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, let me check.
Hong Kong, is it graduated?
Outside ASEAN, Mr. Chair, let me find the data. Outside ASEAN.
Mr. Chair, I think, given our experience, we may seriously consider just a flat rate for purposes of tax administration, because let's face it, there are a lot of ways, and we know for a fact that there are a lot of ways by which the income tax the actual tax payment would be I don't want to quote legitimately, but would appear to be legit with all sorts of deductions, etc. Given our culture, don't you think the equity is achieved more by imposing a flat rate regardless of the amount? I mean, looking at the reality of our tax system and our tax administration, wouldn't you think that a flat rate is better positioned or better suited? Ang mangyayari kasi dyan, pag sinabi mo graduated, ay efforts will be exerted to lower the taxable income.
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chair, Mr. Minority Leader, in Hong Kong there are 4 brackets. In fact, in our proposal, we wanted to reduce the 7 current brackets to, well, it is officially seen as 6, but only 4 are the ones that really matter because 99% do not have incomes above 2 million. So we think, Mr. Chair, there is, of course, much merit to the Minority Leader's concern. The equity can be good on paper, but if not administered well, could be actually quite bad, as we see today, between the disparity between wage income and the self-employed. Our Secretary's position, as far as I know, is to maintain the progressivity of the income tax system and to simplify the consumption tax and other taxes to achieve a more equitable and better administration of the tax
Anyway,
system.
if with indulgence of Senator Drilon, maybe the department could consider an optional for those 3 million and above, in line with what Senator Drilon has said, with the knowledge that the progressivity is maintained by the schedular
Yes.
option, and the practicality is maintained by the option of having the flat rate. Just to consider it
yes,
going
yes.
forward, no? As an option. I don't think we'll settle that debate right now.
Yes.
No?
If I may, Mr. Chair, of course we will most seriously consider this proposal. I think it is very good, it has merit. However, one reason also why we are not very, well, we have some concern about a flat rate for above the 3 million is because self-employed and professionals have varying cost structure.
Sure.
That
We
means
understand that.
a flat rate is basically an average.
Yeah.
Those who will benefit.
I mean,
will
if you're in
of course-
retail, you won't avail of a flat rate.
Correct.
Because you have high costs.
Correct.
So you don't want it off the top. You want it off the net income.
Yes.
No, I understand that.
However, those on the opposite side, even if
Yeah,
they
that's why
don't
that's
meet
why
it-
the option is kind of something that will appeal to the broad majority if you have an option. So I'm asking you to consider it now.
Yes, sir.
And maybe we can go to the resource persons already.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I
just-
don't think
just
because I
one-
think the debate will be enlightened by the comments of the resource persons. So.
If I may, just one last
Sige,
point.
sige, okay.
So in that case, as you rightly point out, Mr. Chair, the retailers won't avail of this. However, everyone else below the 8% will avail, and we will see much decline in revenues. That is one concern.
So maybe in line, since we're already going there, could you give us the universe of the SEPs, the self-employed and the professionals, so we know how many people we're talking about and the industry breakdown?
Mr. Chair, are we free to make a comment at this point?
If it's a short one, okay, but if you're going to give your thesis already, wag muna sana. What is your comment?
No, I can make it short because it's related to the 8%.
Hindi kasi we want to set parameters muna para malinaw yung discussion. Alam natin sino yung pinag-uusapan natin. Ilang professionals yan, anong industriya sila, di ba? What is the total amount involved with respect to government revenues?
Mr. Chair, I address this question
Yes,
to you.
go ahead, Senator.
Is the amnesty proposal on estate taxes, which I understand was filed by the Senate President, is that part of what we are reviewing now?
The committee is reviewing it also, but for now the view seems to be that it should be a separate measure, but a parallel measure, but a separate measure.
Yes, because
Yeah.
I would suggest that if we are going to consider that, and apparently the Department of Finance has no basic objection to that, that it should be passed together with the reduction of the...
Yes, I agree with you, Senator.
It should not be separate, otherwise
Yeah.
knowing...
I mean, when I say separate, because the tax package is referring to the tax code, but the amnesty is is not pertaining to the tax code. So separate measure, but moving along together.
But is there any technical or constitutional objection to making it part?
We could do it
part of
either way,
the-
but we will tackle it.
We should tackle it
together. Yes, yes. Are we ready with the data? If not, we can go to the other resource persons while we're preparing the data. Yeah.
Maybe we
Would help to have a pie chart of
Sure,
the
sure. We
SEPs
will
to know.
find it, yes.
Yeah, sige.
We can
Okay.
go to the others.
So we'll go to the other resource persons in the meantime. The BIR, DepCom, Valeroso. Maybe you could help us with the data. Ilan bang kinokolekta nyo dyan sa ilan sila at ilan ho yung koleksyon ho ng gobyerno dyan?
Okay, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. For the year 2014, we have the data only for the year 2014.
2017 na ho.
The available data only for the other actual collections also.
Wala ba tayong mas hot pandesal dyan kaysa sa 2014? Parang... This is what? Also 2014? Ba't huli na? Why don't we have later data? Bakit nga?
Your Honor,
Can we know why we don't have data later than 2014?
We are trying to generate, Your Honor, the 2015 and the 2016.
Okay,
system.
okay.
We
So
want
yung
to
i-represent
make
mo
it
is
up to
2014?
Yeah, the available one is
Oh,
2015.
kasi pag enforce na natin dito, 2018 na, Commissioner.
Yeah, for 2014, there were 517,668 single proprietorship and professionals with a collection of 358.5, a gross income of 358.5 million in a billion in a collection of 31.046 billion.
558 billion.
300
Is that gross income or
358
taxable income? Ho?
Gross
income.
Gross income. 358.5 billion, sir.
358.
0.5.
358.5
Yeah.
billion. Okay.
Yes. In a collection of 31.04 billion.
Okay, ulit mo lang, please.
So that, to repeat, no, for Senator Gilon, gross
Yeah.
income of 358.5 billion, tama?
Yes, sir.
And collection of 31
0.04
billion. Well, offhand,
31.04 billion.
31.04 billion collected.
31.04 billion.
B.
D.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
So,
say 31B just.
That offhand, Commissioner, that's about, that's less than 10%. Mga 9% lang yun of the gross income. So, is that the effective tax rate, Yusek Chua? Would the effective tax rate be 9%, given those figures? Mga 9, 8 to 9, di ba? 8 to 9%. Yeah. So I was wondering your comment earlier about 5%. What are the figures which support it? Yeah. Sorry? Yeah.
If I may, Mr.
Yes, yes,
Chair,
please.
the ETR, the average ETR that was mentioned, which is 5%, actually it's 4.7%, is for those with sales of 3 million and below.
3 million and below, yeah.
Opo.
So what is the average AETR for 3 million and above?
I'll check.
I would think it's even less. Di ba? Because there's a greater availment probably of deductions, etc., expenses. It's probably even less than 5%. Di ba? Less pa. To be less than 5%. Yeah. Well, anyway, while you're computing that, any other data to share with us, Commissioner Valerosa, DepCom? Any other regarding the universe of the self-employed and professionals?
Mr. Chair, for number of taxpayers who are ICP, self-employed professionals with a gross sales of more than 3 million. It's not more than 3 million. It's 393,474, so we have to deduct it to the
Ano po yun? Pakiulit ho. Medyo hindi clear yung dating ho.
out of the universe of that I have mentioned earlier.
Please speak to the microphone. We could hardly understand.
You're mumbling, Deputy Commissioner.
Okay, may
Pagka hindi pa tayo sure, patayin na muna yan yung mic. Tapos pag sigurado na tayo, pwede natin i-on ho.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, there were 517,668 taxpayers with a...
Tapos na ho tayo doon. Tapos na ho tayo doon. We know how many professionals.
We will deduct only the 393,474 that has 3 million and below income, so that the remaining will be 124,194 whose gross income is more than 24,194
Are greater than 3 million.
whose sales are greater than 3 million.
Okay. But just to be clear, hindi 3 million ang threshold ngayon. 3 million na bang threshold? Yeah, it's a proposed threshold, no?
Yeah.
Just to be clear about it.
Mr. Chair, under the old law, it's the threshold for VAT is 1,919,500.
Okay. So anyway, since you mentioned it already, what are the collections from these the different groups, yung below 3 million and the above 3 million?
For the below 3 million, the below 3 million, it's 16.33 billion.
And the rest is about 14 point something, 14 to 15 billion.
So 14 around 14.
14.9, something like that. 14. Okay. 14.7 billion. Okay. Thank you. Any other information you can share with us?
That's all for in the meantime.
Ano yung year-on-year increase niya? Because I know that was a focus of Commissioner Henares and Secretary Purisima, di ba?
On the registration.
Oh, nagkaroon tayo ng
It's about
advertising
5 to 8.
campaign, may shaming campaign tayo, di ba?
It's about 5 to 8% new registrants.
Every year,
Every year.
tumataas.
Yes.
How about for 2016 vis-a-vis 2015? What are the figures for, ano yung figure for 2015, 2016?
Mr. Chair, if my memory serves me right, it's about 2.5 million. Single proprietorship and professionals.
2.5 million, ano po yun?
New, including in our registration database, it's about that figure. 2.5.
So from 517, naging 2 million bigla?
Because of the increase from 2011 to 2017.
Hindi na. Ang tanong ko po is 2015 to 2016 ho. Kasi you gave us the 2014 figures na 350 billion ho. 2015, magkano ho ang kinita nyo sa mga professionals?
I was, my answer, sorry Your Honor, my answer was on the registration.
Okay lang ho. Klaruhin lang ho natin. Mahirap po pag, yung 2015 ho ang hinahanap natin. Ano po yung...
We will give you later na lang, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, hindi talaga hindi namin maintindihan DepCom kasi 2015 figures yan di ba? Tsaka bago nyo ma-compute yung 2016 targets nyo, alam nyo magkano kinita nyo ng 2015, di ba? So bago nyo kinompute yung 2017 targets, alam nyo yung magkano kinita nyo ng 2016. Kasi doon nakabase ho yun di ba?
Ito na yun. 3. Itong total.
Alam mo yun, magkano na-collect.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the collection here per our annual report for 2015 is 309.2 billion.
That's the gross income. That's not collection.
Collection.
31 billion lang kayo nung 2014 Paano naging 300 billion ho?
This 16. This is a composition of sorry sir. It's 16.01 billion.
What is 16.01?
Collection from individual income tax, self-employed and professionals, Mr.
From SEP.
Yeah po.
So
Yes.
bumagsak pa siya. 31 kayo nung 2014
31
eh.
billion yan noong 2014 na.
Paano naging 16?
Nagiging 16 na lang noong 2015.
Yusek, I think we have to get our figures in order because, you know,
Mr. Chair,
before we propose any changes, we must know where we stand at present, you know.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
if it's okay. So for the amount of collections for the total individual income tax for 2015, it's actually 295 billion. Out of the 295 billion,
What is 295 billion?
that's the total collections for individual taxpayers.
So that includes withheld the income.
That includes the compensation and the
Okay, could you not give us that whole figure because it just confuses us? Just give us what we're just asking for the self-employed and professional. So
It's 42.588 billion, sir. In 2015.
2015.
2015.
Okay, 2016.
I don't have the
2016? You don't have.
2015, 42 billion,
42.588 billion, Senator Drilon.
42.58 billion for self-employed professionals.
Yes.
In 2015.
May we ask, representing what gross income, the figure for gross income?
For the gross income, Mr. Chair, what we have is just, for the complete database, is just for the 2014. And it's just the sample database which was mentioned earlier by Depcom Valeroso.
Yeah,
Don't
could-
have the complete database.
What
That's
what is
they
the
gave us.
difficulty in getting these figures? Yeah, this might delay the tax package because if we cannot get reliable data, how can we make enlightened decisions? Parte- There seems to be a problem with the data gathering, but we'll issue an injunction to you that please give us reliable data because without it, we really cannot move in the committee, USEC, no?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, no?
Yeah,
So
Mr. Chairman, assuming that the data is correct, may we know what measures you undertook in 2015, which resulted in an increase of about 35% in your self-employed and professional tax collection, from 31 to 42.
Yeah, USEC, would you be able to answer that? I realize USEC Chua was
Yeah.
not in the department at the time, no?
Yeah.
But, DepCom, paano nag-increase ho from 31 to 42 in 1 year's time? Yung commercial ba yun na nakatungtong yung,
We've conducted
yung doctor
a
sa teacher?
this is combination of
but that also, that hits the...
self-employed
that
and
hits
professionals. So
the
the
self-employed,
collections
yeah.
we mentioned is a collections from self-employed and professionals. This is an individual both because they are mixed income earners, right?
The Department of Finance said from 2014 of 31 plus billion from self-employed and professionals, it went up to 42.58 billion in 2015. Is that correct?
Just to clarify.
No.
No, actually, the 2014 figure for the collection from the self-employed
Oh.
is 38.679.
Not 31, you just said from the BIR, 31 billion.
It's 38.679. For 2015, it's 42.588.
Increase, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whether there's minor
Correct.
differences, that's still an increase of about 11 billion.
Correct, sir.
How do you account for that? What caused that increase? We want to know what caused it, and we'll continue it, di ba? Yeah. An increase in enforcement, or did you send more agents out to look to audit the books of law firms, or sole proprietorships, etc.
May I answer
Or
that, Mr. Chair?
Resibo campaign ba yan?
Yeah, we have conducted several programs here, implemented several programs. One among those is the Plan Candado, the tax mapping operations to look into the issuance of invoices. And of course, the campaign during the time of Commissioner Kim, we conducted a rigid campaign among regions and district offices. This accounts on the improvement. I was there as the regional record. These were the activities that we have done. So it is the increase is on account of the several programs that we have implemented. Plan Candado, mapping, tax mapping, intensive tax campaign, and the audit, of course, included in that activities.
Of cars?
Audit, meaning the issuance of letters of authority for those who are considered as
Sige, we want a
taxpayers.
formal answer on record as to
Yeah.
explanation how to increase.
Yes. We will submit our
Deputy Commissioner,
answer.
can you also put how many, for example, in tax mapping, ilan na napunta ng tax mapper, ilan mga nahuling, na-issue ng notices, ilan mga ganun para, and then, ano yung corresponding collection para makita rin natin kung effective itong mga ginawang measures.
Yeah, we have that, Mr. Chair, Your Honor.
Ibigay na lang ho on record para... Any other questions from the senators? If not, we can finally go to... So we'll expect the data for 2015 and 2016, a little more detailed, please. Again, to speed up, given that the President has already certified this as urgent, I think we need to speed up processing this. Can we hear from the NTRC, Mr. Donaldo Bu?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Actually, the NTRC observed that the 250 exempt gross sales or receipts makes it at par with the compensation income earners. So, effectively, they enjoy the 250,000 enjoyed by compensation income earners because the 8% will be applied only on the excess of 250,000. So, as mentioned by Yusik Chua, there are differences in the cost structure of self-employed and professional. So, there will be advantage, will benefit, and other might be disadvantaged by the proposed 8% gross income tax. And the 250,000 exempt threshold actually improves equity in the tax system because it covers most of the minimum income earners. And right now, there are, say, sort of inequity in the exemption of minimum income earners because of the differences in the amounts of minimum wage in the regions, and the income tax as a national imposition should be applied equally to those who are earning the same amount of income. So right now, in Metro Manila, those who are earning 491 and below are exempt, but other workers who are earning the same amount outside Metro Manila and where the minimum wage is lower, they are subject to tax. So the uniform amount of 250 improves the equity in our tax system. And we also
Lugi
have
yung mga
to
nasa
say-
probinsya. Lugi yung nasa probinsya.
Yes.
Lugi sila?
Lugi po sila because of the difference in the amount of minimum wage, statutory minimum wage. So,
Yung minimum wage nakatali yun sa cost of living. So they pay a lower minimum wage because the cost of living is lower in that area. Because the wage board set it based on the cost of living in the area, di ba? So hindi rin sila nagbabayad ng... They won't be making the 490 anyway. Kung 490 ang kinikita nung sa Manila, 380 let's say in Cabanatuan, hindi naman nila kikitain yung 490, di ba? Kasi minimum wager sila. So what is you're saying the inequity is if he makes 490
For those who
pesos.
are earning 490 in Kabanatuan, but
Babayad siya na
that
ng
is
tax doon sa
already...
difference. He pays a
yes,
tax
that
on the
is al-
difference between 490 and 380.
Yes, on the entire
Okay.
income. So, it makes the
Entire, not only on the increment. It's on the
Yes.
entire income.
on the
Tama.
entire income.
Talagang may wage distortion yun. That we will address that. That's one of the things the committee will address. The issue of wage distortion.
Clarification. Is it not that the minimum wage is already exempt from minimum wage earners from income taxes?
Yes,
Yes.
they are exempt.
They are
So,
exempt, right? Or okay, let me ask the next question. Do you set the minimum wage only at what 409? Shouldn't you therefore have different levels of exemption because you have a regional minimum wage? You cannot say that in Nueva Ecija, in the example given, is or the 490 in Manila is at a disadvantage because beyond 390 or 490 is no longer minimum wage. Is that how I understand it? Explain to me how.
I think Senator Julan, what he's saying is that may difference yung taga Nueva Ecija. Let's say kumita siya ng 490. Yung Manila 490 exempt siya. Yung sa Manila 490. Buo, exempt siya sa buo. But yung sa Nueva Ecija, he's paying a tax not only on the increment over the minimum wage, but over the whole thing. Meaning he should be exempt from the 380 and below, in theoretically, because he needs that amount.
minimum wage.
Because he needs that amount to live.
That's it, because that's the
Yes,
minimum wage.
because that's the minimum wage. But in practice, he pays for it on the whole income. Yun ang sinasabi niya.
Is that
Yes, that's why it causes wage distortion. And I've heard this from many businessmen that many of their employees do not want to be promoted because they'll be taking home less. Although earning more in theory on paper, they're actually
Yeah, but that does not apply to the minimum wage. I heard that from, those way above the minimum wage.
it doesn't apply to the minimum wage, but it applies when you move slightly
Yes,
higher than the
yes,
minimum
yes.
wage. So that's the distortion we aim to address going forward.
So why are you taxing, in the case of minimum wage earners, the one who earns 490, which is the income, which is the minimum wage in Manila? Why do you tax somebody from Nueva Ecija from the first peso up to 490 when in fact there's a principle, there's a law that says minimum wage earners are exempt from personal income taxes?
because that's in the law, Republic
Didn't,
Act
the law didn't
9504.
address that because we had a schedular income tax and then we passed Republic Act 9504 which exempted minimum wagers, but it did not foresee that problem of distortion, Senator Dillon.
It did not consider the regional minimum wages.
The distortion problem actually doesn't only apply if you're comparing regions, it also applies to Metro Manila. Like someone who's working in Metro Manila and earning a minimum wage, let's say his boss wants to tell him, sige, from 490, gagawin na kitang 550 a day. Sasabihin nung employer, nung empleyado, ayoko kasi magbabayad na ako ng tax dyan at yung tax sa kabuuan.
Kabuuan na,
So mas mali yung uwi ko. So there's really a problem of distortion and we acknowledge that. Yeah.
We also share the observation of the DOF that differentiating the tax treatment between individuals, self-employed and professionals and compensation income earners affects the progressivity of the tax system, and we also want to give the individual an option to choose from the 8% gross income tax or be subjected to the graduated tax schedule for compensation income earners. So that's for personal.
NTRC, your job is to study trends, di ba? In revenue. Tax research, I suppose. You're looking year to year yung collection.
Yes, we have.
So I'm sure you've studied the collections of SEPs over the years. Ano ang trends dyan?
Yes.
What do you see? What reforms are you recommending?
The average that the self-employed and professionals contributed only on the average 15% of the individual income tax collection, while the compensation income earners are contributing 85% of the total individual
Sa ibang
income
bansa
tax
ba, ano
collection.
yung distribution? Sa ibang bansa ho? Ano po?
I'm not very familiar with other countries' collection because of the unavailability of data on their personal income tax collection, Your Honor. So,
Unavailability of
apology.
data from the BIR or from other countries ho?
From the
Are you saying other countries don't make that data available?
other countries and its reliability?
Hindi available yung datos sa ibang bansa para sa self-employed at saka sa compensation?
Hindi pa po namin na
Hindi nyo pa tinitingnan.
tinitingnan.
So, iba yung hindi nyo tinitingnan, iba yun sa
Saka
hindi
may
available yung
question po
datos.
on reliability on what we can found on the internet.
Okay. So, ang ibig nyo sabihin, hindi nyo pa tinitingnan ho? Okay.
Yung
Sige po.
question, the ratio of individual income tax collection
Okay.
in other country.
So, ano po yung puntos nyo by citing the 15 and 85% ratio? Ano yung pinupuntos mo nyo doon?
Lopsided po in favor of the self-employed and professionals and their compliance.
Kung titingnan ba po natin yung numbers, ano ba yung distribution? What is the formula? What is the ratio? Kung number of taxpayers. Do we have it, Yusek? Kasi 15 to 85 ang distribution per collection. But for number of taxpayers, what is the ratio? If we have 517,000, how many compensation income earners do we have? Is it times?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
based on the data on the number of registered taxpayers, the distribution is also the same in terms of number. 15% for the business professionals and 85% comprise the compensation.
No, we're talking about the number of taxpayers.
Yes, Mr.
So
Chair.
how many compensation income taxpayers do we have?
Based on BIR data, the number of registered taxpayers for 2015, as of December 2015, compensation income earners is 14 million, business professional is 2.5 million registered taxpayers.
I'm not sure if that exactly answers yung concern natin, no? But we want to have a correspondence. Let's say the 15% income pertains to 517,000 individuals. Tama ho? Is that clear? Baka nagkakamali ho kasi tayo sa assumptions natin eh. But I want to be clear about it.
Apo.
The figure given by DepCom Valerosa earlier of 517,000 self-employed and professionals represents 15% of your collection. Tama ho ba yun?
I-clarify ko lang po. Yung 517,000 po na binanggit ni DepCom,
Yes.
that's actually just the sample database that was given to us by the BIR for 2014.
So you're saying a sample database is not the actual figures? So how can we rely on the if it doesn't represent
Actually, sir, if you
actual
look at
figures?
the actual revenue collection from those 517,000, it already represents 80% of the total actual collection. Because the figure that was given to you earlier, for the 517,000, it represents 31 billion revenue collection out of the 38 actual collection from the self-employed and professionals.
Okay, you should have told us that earlier. So now, the figures you gave us are earlier inaccurate because that collection is not actually 31 billion, it's 38 billion. Is that what you're telling the committee?
Actually, sir, that's also what I clarified with Senator Drilon earlier. For the
So ano ba talaga? Once and for all, I will ask the question to the DOF and the BIR and I expect
Opo.
only one answer,
Ito po
which
yung-
I expect to be the final answer.
Yes, sir.
Kung game show to, last answer nyo na po yan.
Di po, ito po
Wala nang chance na palitan mo yan sana.
Hindi, ito po
What is the figure for 2014 ho?
For 2014, yung actual pong collection na binigay ko po kay Senator Drilon kanina is 38.679 for SEP.
Okay, let's clarify that because when I asked DepCom, 31 billion ang binigay sa atin pala, that's
Opo.
only
And then,
80%.
hindi,
Oh.
opo. So, 38
Diba?
po yung sa
Then
total.
we would have been operating on erroneous data or erroneous assumptions.
And then, we got a sample database from them for the SEP, and the collection from the sample database is 31 billion. Kaya po, 31 out of 38, that's already 80%.
Yeah, okay, that's clear. But we're concerned with total figures and we expect them to be accurate. So 2014 is 38.679 billion. Tama ba?
Opo, tama.
Representing 517 taxpayers. Or hindi. Yung 507 is also the 80%.
517 is the 80%, sir.
Okay,
In
so what is
terms
the
of
figure
revenue-
regarding the number of SEPs? That's the universe that we're talking about today and people are going to comment on that. Ilan po yun?
Ang meron po sa kanilang nakapublish na registered taxpayers for the SEP or the business professionals for 2014 is 2.3 million. Yun din po yung makikita nyo sa annual report.
What is
niya.
2.3 million? That's the number
The
of...
number of business and professionals registered.
Okay, how many of them actually paid taxes of the registered? Putsangin. Okay.
Sige po. This is also based on the BIR data sa kanilang annual report. For the 1701, which represents the self-employed and professionals, for 2014, the number of tax returns filed is 575,638 for 2014.
1,000
638 po.
returns filed.
Opo.
And ano yun?
And-
Lahat nagbayad yon? Lahat yun? Basta nag-file ka ng return, may bayad na ng buwis yun? Walang zero yon? Yung iba zero, yung iba negative.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Okay, so let's be clear. Ilan ang negative doon? Let's break it down. Ilan ang positive, ilan ang negative?
Mr. Chairman, there was mention earlier of 517,668 self-employed
Yes.
professionals in
Yes,
2000.
which we're told now,
What is this?
30 minutes later, that that is already only 80% of the universe. When we asked for the universe, they gave us 80%.
80% of the what? Of the
Self-employed and professionals.
So the total universe for the self-employed professionals per DOF is what? 2.3?
2.3 registered. Yeah. But the ones who filed tax returns, Senator Drilon, are 638,000. But not all paid taxes.
Jesus Christ, that is really... Can we expect a more valid data from a more accurate data from both the DOF
Yeah,
and the BIR?
I think if the DOF and the BIR are unable to come up with the data, maybe it's better if we just, it's a better use of our time to go through. A lot of people are waiting to give their, yeah. We'll just come back to you, and if the NTRC is finished, we'll, meron pa po kayong comments?
Perhaps when estate tax is discussed.
Pero last question for the NTRC, no? Because your job is really a research center and you're supposed to be studying long-term trends and I suppose comparative law as well. Anong findings nyo from the low collections of the past years? What are your findings with respect to SEPs? How do we improve? How do we reform the system going forward?
I think there are a lot of factors that affect the compliance of self-employed and professionals. And it can be on the administrative side and it can
Sigurado,
be on the
established na yan.
policy side.
Administrative side. Hindi nyo naman talaga ma-audit lahat yan. Sa dami.
Because of the
So, anong measures natin going forward? Anong recommendations
self-assessment
natin?
system,
Kaya mababa kasi self-assessment. In effect, self-assessment system siya. Tama ba yun?
that perhaps contribute to the low contribution as compared to sa employees that can contribute. But on the policy side, they enjoy both worlds because they are allowed to claim deductions like a corporations, and they are also allowed to claim personal and additional exemption allowance enjoyed by individuals. So they enjoy both words from the corporate side, those itemized or optional standard deduction, and the personal and additional exemption allowance for individual taxpayer. So perhaps that also contributes to the low collection from the self-employed and professional. So there are actually a lot of options that we can consider to improve the compliance, one of which might be to be studied later, to impose, say, minimum professional income tax. We can, I think, study that. Like a corporate, if we
Hindi ba yun
tax
yun
like
ang
a
puntos
corporation,
ng 8%? Parang nagiging presumptive income tax na yung 8%. Yung sinasabi nyo, parang minimum, yun ang equivalent ng minimum corporate income tax, yung 8%. Kaya nga ginagawang, ano siya, di ba?
Yes, that 8% tax on gross sales or receipts can be equated or the equivalent of the minimum corporate income tax for corporations, which is based on gross income.
Okay, thank you. Salamat sa NTRC. Can we hear from the DTI? Andito po ba? Department of Trade and the BOI. Can we hear from the DTI ho? Sino? Who is the representative? Attorney Lester Olimpo. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Your Honors. We are still uncertain as to the data being required with the Board of Investments. But because any
initial opinions regarding?
We haven't formed any positions as of.
Are you new to the DTI? Matagal na ho kayo?
We are with the Board of Investments.
Board of Investments. So you don't really deal with small and medium enterprises?
No, sir.
Board of Investments tends to deal with the large scale. So ask the committee why we invited the Board of Investments and not the USEC who deals with the MSMEs. Yes, Senator Gatchalian.
Mr. Chair, babalik lang ako sa NTRC, no? And this is actually, we've been talking about effectivity, no? How far are we in the computerization, and how far are we in making this convenient to the self-employed professionals, no? Because I know in the United States, I have relatives there, napakabilis magbayad eh, no? And it really makes them, it really encourages them to pay because it's very convenient. There's no reason for them not to pay because pwede na sa cellphone, sa internet, bank transfers. How far are we in that modality?
With due respect to the Honorable Senator, baka po mas masasagot ang inyong tanong ng mga kasama natin sa
Since
BIR.
you also are in that, I want an independent view on this, no? Siyempre pag tatanungin mo sila, but I want an independent view because you're supposed to also look at the different practices all over the world, no? So from your point of view, nilang, how far are we in that computerization?
I'm not very privy on the aspect of level of computerization at the BIR and as compared to other countries' level of tax administration or computerization.
Sir, siguro baka pwede natin tignan to, no? Because we're all looking for solutions to make it effective and as much as possible compliant to our taxpayers. And isa sa mga naririnig ko from is really the convenience, no? And can you put this in your research? What are the best practices in other countries that led to a more effective collection?
Yes, sir.
Lagay natin dahil kayo yung
We
premier research.
will note that because we have a few papers on, I think, taxation, on the how to tax e-commerce and
Make it convenient, no? Make it convenient for the self-employed professionals to pay.
I understand that that's why they are into e-filing, e-payment. So that's part of the improvement,
Study ho kayo?
advantage of the
May study ho
technology.
kayo, e-commerce and taxation? Can you furnish us with a copy of that study?
We are exploring because really the taxation of e-commerce is very challenging.
Yes, I know. That's why I want to see it, because that's a challenge all over the world. Europe, the EU just gave Google a 2.2 billion euro fine for unpaid taxes. That's why I'm very interested. Tapos na ho ba yun o hindi pa? Ginagawa pa?
Actually, in the past, we have some write-up.
Tapos na ho ba o ginagawa pa?
Meron na pong natapos na.
Can the members of the committee be furnished with copies of the study, please?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, may I direct the same question to BIR? Kung how far are we in computerization and then making the lives of our taxpayers easy by paying online, using the mobile phones to pay their taxes? How far are we in that, no?
Your Honor, we migrated from the old one to the electronic tax information system, and right now we are piloting large taxpayer service in the Makati region. So if ever there is already enough evidence that this is already efficient and applicable to all the regions, then it will be cascaded to the different regions of the country.
Makati ho, may pilot.
On electronic tax information system.
So you can now pay online?
There are systems that are already into this, and it is still in the pilot stage, and we want that efficient so that we will be cascading into the different regions.
When can we see it rolled out nationwide, DepCom? Meron bang timetable tayo dyan?
It is within the year.
Within the year po?
Yung matagal na natin panawagan yan 2-3 years ago pa. And Commissioner Henares already agreed that we should move towards that system. And we had an e-filing for income tax, kaso taon-taon, nagpa-pop down. Can you not interrupt me, please? Let me finish up. Taon-taon ginagawa natin yan, pero nag-e-filing tayo, but you also require the hard copy. So yun, hindi ko maintindihan. If you have it defeats the purpose, pinahirapan nyo pa yung taxpayer. Kasi dalawa pa yung file niya. The e-filing should be in lieu of always in lieu of the actual filing. Diba? Kasi pinahirapan nyo pa dinoble nyo pa yung gagawin niya. If you require double filing, the only convenience of that is able to meet the deadline without going to the bank or the office, diba? Ang sabi nga sa akin ng mga ibang nagpa-file, alas 3 sila ng umaga nagpa-file kasi doon lang pumapasok.
Sino naman magbabayad ng alas 3?
So hindi naging madali, di ba? Yung technology is supposed to make life easier. So anyway, DepCom, I appreciate the concern of Senator Gatchalian because it's something we already asked you to do. So kumbaga follow-up na lang ho. Ano yung follow-through dun sa technology natin? Kasi wala pa sa USEC Chudan, hiningi na natin yun kay Commissioner Henares na padaliin natin yung filing dahil yun ang reklamo ng ating mga April 15, di ba, hirap na hirap sila.
Actually, Mr. Chair, the electronic filing and payment system is already in place. It's with the LTS, ganun rin ang nangyari. And with some of those who are enrolled already in the region.
It's LTS, Large Taxpayer Service.
Yes, large taxpayer service.
So inuna nyo sa LTS yung e-filing. Sila yung may mga abogado at saka empleyado na compliance officers na pwede mag-file. Dapat unahin natin yung maliliit, di ba? Yun ang nahihirapan mag-file.
Meron tayong EBR form na, Mr. Chair, through the computer na. Itong why we make a priority on the large taxpayer service because you're monitoring the big accounts. So to make it easy for us to monitor the collections, we do it first in the large taxpayer service group.
Okay, Senator? Yeah. Sige. I think we have a representative from the DTI here. We have Ms. Alice Opeña. Ma'am, could you tell us what department or what agency, what department of the agency you represent?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. I'm with the Bureau of SME Development of the DTI. And, well, for us, a simplified taxation system for micro, small, and medium enterprises is always a welcome move. Right now, the incentive that we are providing to micro enterprises is exemption from the main payment of the income tax for income derived from application with the BMBEs Act, the Barangay Micro Business Enterprises Act. So right now, we already have about 9,000 registrants starting 2015. And however, based on feedback that we have been getting from registrants, there are some challenges when it comes to the actual availment of income tax with the BIR. So I hope through time we can, improve on the procedures, or maybe, BIR could make their procedures more simplified in the micro enterprises' actual availment of the incentive under the BMBs Act. Thank you.
Okay. It's not exactly on the tax package now, but any comments on the tax package? Is 3 million a sufficient? Is that a good line to draw with respect to our SMEs? What is the definition of under that you encounter?
Right now, Your Honor, 3 million asset size would be for micro enterprises. Yun po yung definition, up to 3 million pesos ang asset size. So I guess micro enterprises would really need help when it comes to tax relief or simplified taxation. So we can go with that. 3 million.
Micro lang yun,
Yes.
3M. So who are we talking about? So micro, sari-sari store, ano pa? Sino pa po yan?
Oh,
Yung
because we use the asset size definition, it could be trading, manufacturing,
Anyone trading, okay.
services. Opo. So we have about 90% of all establishments.
you have a breakdown, ho? If 90% are micro,
Yeah.
Ilan po yun?
According to the 2015 statistics of the Philippine Statistics Authority, we have about 896,000 establishments in the country. So we get 90% of that. So yan po yung micro enterprises.
Yeah, it's over 800,000
Yes,
establishments.
opo.
And what is the breakdown, ho, per industry? Trading is the largest part.
50% would be about 48 to 50% would be trading, and 15% manufacturing, and the rest distributed among services. But in under services, there would be various categories, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'm curious. Sa services, who would these people be? Freelancers, people like that? People offering their services, like online, someone like that?
Apo,
Sino pa? Sino pa yung mga ano dyan?
It could be sa food or hospitals. It's
So
considered
yung mga, for example, yung talents sa TV,
services
yun,
na
they are
rin.
considered also micro-enterprise.
Yes,
sila.
Your Honor.
They fall under your definition, ho?
Yes, sir.
Because many of these entertainment workers, directors, cameramen, they're no longer salaried workers. Many of them are already on project basis, no?
Yes,
So
sir.
kasama ho
Opo.
sila doon.
Opo.
Okay.
Kasi the major categories would be trading, manufacturing, services. So most of the rest would fall under services, the rest of enterprises.
Okay. So 3 million, USEC only covers micro enterprises, no?
Actually,
So,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
yeah.
clarify. In the DTI, when they segregate the enterprises by micro, small, medium, large, they use asset as a basis. However, for tax purposes, that is not easy to use. That is why we use the gross sales or gross receipt. If the return on asset, let's say, is well, it depends, no? But if, let's say, it is 10%, then a 3 million, so sorry. So our 3 million is based on gross sales or gross receipt, not the asset. So there's a big difference. 3 million actually is derived from the following. So our current is 1.9 million. Adjusting that to inflation will get us to 2.5 million, and it is basically rounded up. Just to compare, Thailand's threshold today is 2.6 million, and Japan is 4.4 million. So the basis for determining the 3 million is adjustment to inflation, but also comparing with countries around our region so that we can benchmark.
Thank you. DTI, are you finished? Tapos na po kayo? Okay, thank you. Can we hear from TMAP? We have Attorney Malulin. Yeah, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. With regard to the 8% gross income tax, I think in terms of the very purpose of having that 8% final income tax is really for simplification. However, since it will be imposed to those earning not more than 3 million of their gross receipts or gross sales, it would, as pointed out earlier, it could either be too low or too high, depending on what business you are in. So for a small or micro businessman, that would mean that regardless of whether he makes a profit or a loss, he will be paying the 8% final income tax. That is now, I think, in the House Bill 5636. Now, on the proposal that it will be optional, that would mitigate but it doesn't address completely the issue, but it would mitigate in the sense that at least the affected taxpayers would have that option to choose whether they be taxed at 8% or the graduated income tax rate. However, what needs to be considered as well, if it will become optional, then we also need to have that optional standard deduction if it will be a graduated rate. Otherwise, if it would not serve the simplification, because before the optional standard deduction was offered to self-employed and professionals so that it would be able to have a simpler reporting of its income tax. But however, because the optional standard deduction in the past was based on gross receipts, which is 40%, it did not really appeal to a number of self-employed, because if you're in trading or in your manufacturing, you would not be earning like 60% of your net income. So I think if it will be based on gross income, at least their direct costs will already be covered. So all the operating expenses or the others, if they would go for simplification, at least that would address. However, we also need to consider if it will be optional is on the implementation side, because it may also be very complex on the part of BIR to monitor, because how do you do the option? It will be on an annual basis, because if you are under 8% final income tax, that will be in lieu of percentage tax. And so at the beginning of the year, you need to determine whether or not you'll be covered by the final income tax. So in terms of the facility monitoring these taxpayers, we also need to balance in that regard. So in relation to, although as I've mentioned, the option being an optional, because we've discussed this with the OF before, that it will mitigate, but it doesn't really address the problem. As the minority leader pointed out earlier, if you're under 8%, there's a tendency to really control the growth of your, the grosses or gross receipts, which actually may also be, it will run counter to the government's initiative to really encourage entrepreneurship. So I think that's one of the things that we need to be considered if we really want to have this optional or this 8% final income tax.
Mr. Chair, so having said all of that, what do you recommend?
Okay. Well, there are a number of recommendations, or there are a number of things that may be considered. As was pointed out, optional, availment of that optional final income tax would be one. Another one would really be to just have optional on the 8% final income tax.
Right, without the 3 million threshold?
No. You still have that 3 million threshold. Because if you're above the threshold, it would be a tax like a corporation. So you're entitled to all the deductions or the optional standard deduction based on gross income. Now, another option would be to see if it would be better to just have one scheduler rate. But I think right now, because the proposal, the top rate is at 35%, I think that one needs to be reconsidered as well. Because I think one of the reasons why we're looking at that 35% is before it was, we wanted to be competitive with our ASEAN neighbors, but 35% would still seem to be at the higher than our colleagues in, well, Thailand is also 35, but then the base is higher, and then there will be a number of exemptions. So even if the effective tax rate for both will still end up to be high. So I think one of the options that can be considered is to have just one table, but we need to see on the scheduler rates and whether 35, if we want to have 35, but we need to have that very high income, not just more than 5 million.
Okay, so you're in favor of maintaining the treatment of self-employed and professionals as corporations, from your remarks? Is that the...
Yes, for those above the threshold.
Yeah, for those above. But
Yes.
but Yusek Chua earlier said that the DOF prefers a schedular similar to the...
I think what, if I understand correctly, what the DOF is, there won't be any more that difference in regime between compensation income earner and those self-employed and professionals.
That's the progressivity argument. You don't want to discriminate. But then there's also the practicality argument, which you, given that the government has not really been able to fully collect from these people. So again, I'll repeat my question to you. Are you in favor of treating them as corporations, or you'd rather they be treated similar to compensation income earners?
Well, in terms of the, I think the problem would be really more on those below the threshold. Because if it's above the threshold, one of the reasons why we're having that 30% or treating them as like a corporation corporate taxpayer is because we also recognize that if you're an entrepreneur or you're a businessman, you also have to put in the capital, you're the one absorbing all the risks of business, unlike when you're a compensation income earner.
But if you make 3.5 million, you're not exactly a big corporation.
Yeah, but
and then
that's why for 3.5.
You'll be paying 30%.
No, for 3.5, yes, because you'll already be beyond the threshold.
That's why Yusek Carl is arguing for progressivity. He thinks, and I agree with him, that I don't think those earning 3.5 million gross receipts should be paying 30%.
Well, yes,
how will you encourage the growth of the sector if you charge them the same as the big corporations? Diba?
Yeah, that's correct, Senator. In the sense that, well, to answer the question on whether, in terms of preference, on whether there's just one schedule between compensation income earners and corporate income or self-employed and professionals, I would say that it would be better if there would just be one schedule. It's just that what we're also concerned about is because the current proposal on the adjustment of the schedular income tax rates is very progressive. I mean, insofar as the top rate is concerned.
That's why I'm wondering why you would prefer them to be treated as corporations when in fact, if you're better off being treated as an individual. So again, I repeat my question to you a third time. Is it better that they be treated as corporations for those earning 3 million and above? Because I think they're better off being treated as individuals.
I think in the past, even in the past, we've discussed that in terms of the self-employed, and there won't be any difference between a compensation income earner and a self-employed and professional.
The only difference that we think is that maybe you should give them, as suggested earlier by Senator Drilon, perhaps we should give them the option of that's available to those earning below 3 million, which is the 8% for simplicity. So you have 8% for above 3 million, you have 8% as a acknowledgement of the difficulty of collecting from these people, and you have the schedular individual rates, which maintains the progressivity.
Yes.
And then you allow your SME sector, your smaller corporations to grow and migrate to higher tax rates, which is good for the economy all around.
Yeah, actually, Senator, that was what I was pointing out a while ago.
Actually, you mentioned that you like that they're treated as corporations, but when you're treated as a corporation, there's only one rate of 30%, which is very high.
I know. So, because of the option is on the 3 million, if you're not earning more than 3 million or gross sales or gross receipts of not exceeding 3 million, the optional or the 8% final income tax, you will be covered by that, or you could have that option to be based on the scheduler income tax rate. I think that was the suggestion also a while ago.
Okay, so now are you saying that it's better to be treated as an individual for a smaller corporation? Who's not below 3 million, but let's say someone from 3 to 10 million, for example.
Yes, for a smaller
it would be better if they're...
businessman.
Thank you. Yeah. Are you done? Yeah. Okay. Can we hear from Attorney Rego from SGV? Yeah, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the comment of Yusek Carl Chua on giving the individuals earning less than 3 million and below, 3 million and below, to the option of being under the old system or the current system as opposed to 8%. I think that's more practical because some individuals would actually would want to be registered as a VAT taxpayer, because if they see the potential of growing and dealing with bigger taxpayers, the bigger taxpayers or customers would want to recognize input VAT from their purchases from these self-employed individuals or sole proprietors. So I think that option should be made available. So that's I think that would be wise. Just regarding the 8% on professionals and self-employed individuals, I just want to point out that the expanded withholding tax on them at the moment, particularly for professionals, is actually 10 and 15. Okay, so if you are earning less than 720,000 in a year, the EWT is 10%. So that's actually going to be bigger than 8%. So I suppose the BIR will reduce the expanded withholding tax on them, because it doesn't make sense that the EWT is higher. Okay, right. I just want to point out also regarding the self-employed individuals and professionals. I recall that Professor Estela Kimbo of the UP School of Economics actually did an extensive study on the tax compliance rate of the self-employed individuals and professionals. I think it would be helpful for us to know how much or how many of the professionals are actually filing and paying income tax overall vis-a-vis the total number of professionals registered with the PRC, with the Supreme Court. But I think what was not covered by that study are the freelancers who did not necessarily take any professional licensure examination. I just want to ask Mr. Chairman, because Yusek Carl mentioned about the increase of the standard deduction from 1 million to 1.225. I just want to know the rationale for the very slight increase, because that threshold actually did not move in the last 20 years. So why the very slight increase?
I think he mentioned estate tax from 1 million to 3 million. Is that the one? Or the minimum deduction, the standard? Is it going to be moved to 1? Is it proposed that it be moved to
it's 1.2.
1.25?
Well, this is not the 8%, but the estate.
Right.
Estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To 1.225.
Yeah. 225. Can we? Is it okay if we confine ourselves to the SEP muna for purposes of orderly discussion? If that's all right. Yeah. So if you have any other comments, we'd like to hear. Wala na po. Okay. Can we hear from Attorney Alex Cabrera of Isla Lipana?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, first I have a slightly different take on the SEPs because I think the combination of the professionals with the self-employed is actually doing so much prejudice to the self-employed, which includes the micro enterprises, the backyard industries. I believe that for those who are educated more, that their compliance level, their ability to comply should be higher, and they should just be sampled, and the law should be enforced on them. But I say this because in particular, if we don't do anything about it, even those enjoying exemption from the barangay micro business enterprise will now be subject to the 8% tax, where presently they are not subject to any tax. In fact, ma'am, if the law will be followed, after your application, you're deemed approved. So you don't even need the approval of the BIR to be exempted from income tax. So what's going to happen is you're going to be subject to an 8% tax, the same tax which is applicable to petroleum subcontractors. And that's a huge tax, especially if applied to a micro enterprise. And the reason why I want to segregate them from the micro enterprises, the professionals from the micro enterprises, is the government trust of helping these micro enterprises that we also committed to our APEC commitments, etc. Well, the other thing that I wanted to say is that I think we shouldn't be too concerned about whether it's a corporation or individual. Outside of that exempt threshold, I think that there will be more parity if you ignore the vehicle and just treat them the same, because otherwise individuals will incorporate, and that's very easy to do that, and even an individual practitioner can enter into partnership. It's also very easy to do that. So let's just scratch the economic activity and the revenue and have parity of treatment. But then again, carve out that micro enterprise business, which should be exempted from.
Sorry to interrupt. I understand what you're saying, no? Regarding the arbitrage between corporate structures. There'll be some people trying to find the best deal. But how can we ignore it when you have different treatment for corporations and individuals? We have to make a choice. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Oh.
But so if
we can't ignore it. In fact, we have to make a conscious decision as to how we're going to treat those self-employed professionals earning 3 million and above.
Mr. Chair, what I'm saying is that if you're an individual engaged in business, you should be treated like a corporation unless you have the exemption under the Barangay Micro Business Enterprise Law. But even that law should be amended, Mr. Chair, because the bill is using gross receipts, and we can easily extrapolate how much revenue is required in order for you to recover your 3 million capital over a period of 2 or 4 years, and that will amount to about 3 million in gross receipts as well. Another thing is that the Barangay Micro Business Enterprise Law was passed more than a decade, I think 2 decades ago. It's using inflation, that would easily be 5 million now, even more than 5 million. So you're looking at a gross revenue of 5 million that should be exempted and not touched at all. And then if you exempt the small businesses up to a certain threshold, then that's where you can apply your fixed tax. But you cannot apply your fixed tax on this micro enterprise.
So you would like them 5 million and below to be exempt?
5 million and below to be exempt, Mr. Chair, or let's review the 8% rate.
But then 5 million and above, 30% na.
5 million and above should be subject to tax like a corporation. You know, whether you're an individual or a corporation.
Decision we have to make.
Yeah, no, yeah. The reason why I think the 8% should be reviewed is that, as I said, it's applicable to petroleum subcontractors. But if you look at the PESA registered enterprises, which are only paying 5% on gross income, and if you give them that 40% option reduction theoretically, then they're only paying 5% on their 60%, which is basically 3%. 3% of their gross sales.
Effective tax rate.
Yes.
This
So
is
if
in
you-
PESA. In PESA.
This is PESA.
Because they have the GIE, then they have also the
Correct. If you can give
the
that,
OSD also.
yes, Mr. Chair, and if you can give that to very large corporations,
Why not the smaller ones?
Why not the smaller ones? So you're looking really at 3%. So if you want to catch the base, you mean put it in 5 million, even tax them at 3%, remove the barangay micro business. That's 3%, period. And then you catch them all, and then they graduate to the 30%.
Masyadong malaki yung jump from 3% to 30%.
Well, the 30% is up.
Then we go back to Senator Drilon's argument that others will try to doctor their books para hindi sila mag-graduate sa 30%. So
Mr. Chair, I would say that regardless of size, corporations will be able to doctor their books. So even the very, very large ones, with your help, Mr. Chair, I take it very lightly because the firm is a very honest taxpayer. We land in the top 500 taxpayers even if our income is small. But the 30%, Mr. Chair, is based on the net income now. And then you're able to pass on your VAT, so you don't have any VAT cost as well. And then you even have input VAT. So the tax regime changes, so it's not necessarily bigger or smaller.
Okay, yeah, I think Yusek Chua wants to comment. Yeah.
I think, Mr. Chair, the Bambi law was actually one of our consideration because this law has been there, as mentioned, for several years. However, let me clarify, yung 3 million is also an asset-based approach. So what that means is if the return in asset is 5 to 10%, then the net income would probably be 150 to 300,000, which is actually the reason also why the threshold that we have set for the exemption is 250,000. In the end, what we propose is that we do not have a lot of different provisions, laws, or treatments for informal workers, marginal sector workers, Bambi, enterprise, and then minimum wage. We just have one single tax system wherein, regardless of who you are or your status, your first 250,000 is exempt, and only those income above, or taxable income above 250,000 will be taxable at incremental rates. That is why, going back, we propose that the 8% optional might be a more doable solution than the House version of having it mandatory.
Okay, that's an important distinction. Thank you for pointing that out, between gross income and gross assets. No? Can we hear from Ms. Rebecca Gadi from the UP School of Labor and Industrial Relations? Ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm actually representing an NGO, the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement, but since I come from the academe, my comment will be somewhat generic and systemic. No? First of all, for me, taxation should be motivational. It should motivate people. If you are in business, or if you are both, whether if you're in business or not.
Motivate to pay. Not
Motivate to pay and motivate to work. Okay, so that you can pay eventually more, no? And then it should be compliant, encourage compliance, and it should encourage changing mindset of people on what taxation should be. No? Yung sinasabi niyong ibasan ang mga doktor, etc., etc. So, mas ganun yung gusto ko na makita. And coming from an NGO, alam niya naman ang NGO, we are also critical of the government and other organizations. Yun yung gusto naming makita. First also is not only a critic to the government, kundi maybe this could be an encouraging, hopefully this will encourage BIR and etc., etc. Can we look into our databasing system? Yun yung una kong napansin lang kanina doon sa mga deliberation. And then can we look also at the skills of our employees who are already there? I don't want to be abrasive, no? Pero do we still have the skills of people handling this database and this information wherein harapan hindi maibigay sa inyo yung kailangan ninyo? So, yun. And nakapaloob dito yung mindset of how we look and how we improve our government system and government offices. Yun lang po. Sorry, yun yung maiko-comment ko ngayon.
Salamat po. Point is taken, and again, I think we underestimate how important data and statistics are in policy making. No? We need to improve. Can we hear from Mr. Eddie Yap, the chairman of Phoenix? Sir?
On the 8%, Mr. Chairman, my concern is the equity in taxation, because if an individual's sole source of income is his micro business, and gross receipts up to 3 million will be taxable at 8%, regardless whether he makes a profit or not. Would it be consistent with the requirement for equity in taxation, in the sense that an individual would be exempt from income tax for his income up to 250,000? I understand that compensation income is income on labor, while revenue in a business is income from capital. There's a distinction technically. But to a taxpayer, when an employed person is exempt from tax up to 250,000, while an individual whose sole source of livelihood is his small or micro business will be taxed at 8% up to 3 million, regardless whether he makes a profit or not, appears to be inequitable. Now, my suggestion to eliminate this inequity is to treat the micro business similar to an individual. If an individual will be granted 250,000 exemption, the micro business should equally be accorded that privilege by grossing up that 250,000, let's say, with a presumptive net income of
Yes,
10%.
That applies already.
Yes, so
Ano
meaning
yan? Nandun na po yan.
up to 2.5
At 2.5 million.
2.5 million
Okay.
exempt. If the presumptive income tax, net income rate is 10%. So up to 2.5 million exempt from the 8%. But if the presumptive net income from the micro business is 8%, then the exempt threshold goes up to 3,125,000. May I comment on the estate tax? Okay.
But, yeah. So, can we hear from Attorney Enrile from the Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce? Well, okay, I think he may have stepped out. Just to clarify one point which was brought up in the comments of the TMAP and Mr. Yap Yusek, tama ba yung assumption nila na kahit hindi ka kumita, magbabayad ka ng 8%? Kasi parang absurd, di ba? You will go into debt pa, hindi ka nga kumita, babayad ka pa ng 8%.
Okay, that is why, Mr. Chair, that is true. That is why we are very strong on the optional. The House mandated it to be required, and that is the problem that we see.
But even if you require it, even if, let's say, Congress decides to go with the House version, dapat pa rin, pag hindi ka kumita, hindi ka babayad ng tax, diba? Because it's on profit, diba? That's why if the income, that's why you have principles about accrual of income, diba? If you have not realized your income, you do not pay a tax yet, diba?
In the case of the 8%,
so what principle of law or equity would justify the payment of an 8% in view of a lack of profit, diba?
Well, the 8%, Mr. Chair, is a mix of the 3% percentage tax and the 5% effective tax rate on
the
gross
goods and services, may aspect of it that,
yes,
that is a goods and services tax.
Yes.
Okay, understand.
And from the perspective of a more simplified compliance system, that could be an option. That's why we have to, I guess, keep it optional to avoid that problem of forcing
but
them
it's
to
clear, it should be clear that maybe it's not 8% pag ganon, di ba? It's the 3% that should apply. Because your transactions.
the 5% is the average over 5 years across the hundreds of thousands
But the 5%
of taxpayers.
is in lieu of profit, of income tax. Eh,
Yes, yes.
kung wala nang income, wala nang dapat 5%, di ba?
Well, most of the taxpayers, I'm not texting the BIR to produce a data, to show the data. So I'm trying to send the text now.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anyone else who wants to comment on the self-employed and professionals before we tackle the estate and donors? Yes, Yusek.
I think, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to get back on some of the concerns raised by the committee. On the data, of course, we take responsibility for not presenting a very accurate whole picture today, if I may explain, but at the same time, we have already summoned all the BIR people responsible to produce them very quickly. There are basically two types, if I may, Mr. Chair, clarify before we move for everyone's comfort. There are two types of data that we have. A summary data that is reported to the Treasury, to DBM, to Finance, which is the total. And then to be able to understand the breakdown by types of taxpayers, by income brackets, this requires very detailed data. And the very detailed data is currently available up to 2014. That is why we have two numbers. Just to clarify, there are 2.3 million registered self-employed in the BIR's database. Of the 2.3 million registered self-employed and professionals, 575,000 in 2014 filed an income tax return, or the 1701. And we are requesting the BIR to produce data to show which among them filed negative, zero, or positive. So that is our pending. However, for our analysis, the BIR only provided 517,000 taxpayers that are self-employed and professionals with breakdowns. The main reason for this is not all RDOs are computerized, and some from the provinces will have to manually transmit. However, that only represents around 58,000 taxpayers we cannot account. However, the 517,000 taxpayers that we already know with breakdown already covers 90% of the self-employed who filed, and 80% of the collections that has been reported. As mentioned by Director Juvie, the BIR reported to the Treasury a 38.679 billion collection from self-employed, of which 31.046 came from this subset where we have very detailed information. The same information.
Could you repeat the 30 billion? What does that represent?
Okay, the 38.679.
We have that. That's the universe, no?
The
That's
universe
total paid by the
correct.
575,000.
Now the 517.
But you mentioned the 30 billion figure.
Yes,
What does that
31.046. That represents the collection that can be summed up from the individual data that is a
computerized.
subset.
That is
computerized. Yes, that is
but,
the one we
again,
currently have.
I want to clarify because Director Juvie mentioned that it's 80%.
Yes, 80%.
But you mentioned that it's 90%.
No, 90% is on the taxpayer. So 517,000 out of 575,000 taxpayer, 90%.
Okay.
But in terms of collection, it
30
is
billion represents
31 billion represents 80% of the 38 billion,
Okay.
Which we will endeavor to submit very more clear, accurate data so that it is easier to understand.
Okay, and you're saying that there are 58,000 taxpayers whose returns were compiled or filed manually, tama ba?
Probably filed manually but not reported to the central database because they come from the RDOs that are not computerized.
How many RDOs are there?
There
all over
are
the country?
more than 100 RDOs currently, 122 RDOs. Not all, especially.
How many are computerized?
How many are computerized? And regularly submitting with internet connection.
2014 to, kahit walang internet, siguro mo pwede i-submit, di ba?
Not necessarily, sir. Kasi the
3 years na eh, 2017 na eh. Kahit i-postal mail pa yan, siguro malabot na yan.
While waiting for the data, Mr. Chair, I've also requested the Assistant Commissioner in charge of the data to produce the 2015.
Of the 122 RDOs, how many are computerized?
80% siguro.
80%. Saan yung 20% na hindi computerized?
Far flung areas in Mindanao, sir.
So, sa lahat sa ARM ba yan? Where is that? Where are those areas?
The islands.
Islands.
Small islands.
Yeah, small islands that are not able to connect with the internet.
Pero 20% is a substantial number. Kung sinabi niyong 3% or 5%, then you can let it go. But 20% is still 1/5 of the country.
Yes.
Oo. And hindi computerized yan. Walang internet. Pagalitan natin yung DICT. Kasi namimigay sila ng free wifi. Eh, yung gobyerno, hindi pa pala naka-internet.
The Wi-Fi kasi, sir, nasa MRT, the Manila area. But we're talking about the...
No, but they're also giving free Wi-Fi. In Palawan, they said they signed an MOA. Free Wi-Fi. Palawan. The whole province of Palawan.
Baka may tourists.
If you have...
they have priority to serve.
But still, I think,
yes,
you know...
Let me, Mr. Chair, get back to you more fully on all the data requests, in particular the 2015. If I may make a final point, Mr. Chair.
Sabihin na natin 2016 kasi 2017 na. Baka pwede pati 2016. And could you explain your point regarding two data sets so the committee can fully understand the difficulties confronting the department?
What I can, but if I may, Mr. Chair.
Ano yung two data sets? How are they collected physically? And what exactly is the basis for that? Is it who collates the data, and is it only based on what is given in the tax return?
Okay, Mr. Chair, most of the tax payments go through the banking system. BIR seldom collects cash manually. Now, the banking system reports directly to the BIR headquarters, DBM, and the Treasury. That is why every month we can compile totals. That is why it is very easy to get the 38 billion However, for the purpose of our analysis, we do not need the total. We need the individual, all the taxpayers, how much is their sales, their income, their deduction, how much tax we paid, and that is a basis for calculating the effect at the bracket level. And this is the one that takes time. So the BIR only has complete 90% of 2014, less the taxpayers that are not
There is no,
manually.
maybe you can make forms that they just check it off and say, where, I mean, this, di ba nasa tax return yun? What industry you are in, etc.
Yes. So for 2014, that has been accounted for 90%. 2015 is the one I'm requesting now. However, 2016, Mr. Chair, is not feasible because the filing is only this year, April 2017. So at the most, we can request BIR to produce the very detailed data for 2015, which I has sent to the Assistant Commissioner just now, so that we can, of course, comply and speed up this request. Mr. Chair, finally, of course, the main concern is what we do with the self-employed, because they only account for 15% of the total individual tax collection, whereas they account for 40% of individual income based on the national account. So this is clearly, number one, a compliance issue. So we are addressing it twofold. On the policy side, we are simplifying the tax system, including the optional 8% as a way to make them comply. On the other hand, this is, I believe, also a priority of the BIR to continue its profiling benchmarking process so that we can attract more. With the relaxation of bank secrecy for criminal or fraud cases, which is also in the approved House bill and the Senate bill, we think that this can also serve as a stick to encourage more compliance. So we will do it both ways. Mr. Chair, that would be all.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Gatchalian.
We move on to the next topic. I just want to make it very clear lang, Carl, no, yung under the Bambi law, itong mga micro businesses are exempted, no? Up to what sales?
Okay, Mr. Chair, Senator, the basis of the exemption is the 3 million assets, not sales. That is why it's also a bit difficult.
Right, I understand it's sales. So
okay, I looked at average return on assets.
Okay.
The average is around 5 to 10%.
So ngayon kung micro business ka and then your assets up to 3 million, you don't pay anything.
If once you register, you are exempt.
Once you register, you're exempted.
Correct.
Regardless of your sales.
Correct.
Okay.
That is according to the Bambi law. Now, in our proposed reform, it is not necessarily bad for them because the average return on asset is 5 to 10%. So that means if their income is around 150 to 300,000, they are going to be exempt more or less because our exemption threshold in the tax reform is 250,000.
Meron ba tayong survey? I know this is very difficult, no, but did we have a survey? Itong mga nag-register na Bambi law, ano ba yung average sales nila over the past few years? I'm sure may mga nag-register, a lot of these micro businesses availed of this privilege. Did we have a study on their sales?
May I propose if we can ask the DTI if they have the data?
Kung merong...
Are they required to disclose that at source?
Unfortunately, Your Honor, they don't.
Yeah, I doubt they would, unless they're required, they would disclose that.
So
Exactly,
they're not required to disclose their sales?
For DTI, they're not required to report to us their sales.
But they're required to get business permits.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then when you get your business permits, you're required to declare your sales.
Yeah, because the
local, alam ko,
yeah,
the LGUs, alam ko meron silang...
Yes, sir. Maybe with the LGU, Your Honor.
But meron ba tayong efforts to find out ano ba yung mga sales ito for purposes of this reform? Para malaman lang natin more or less accurately itong...
Maybe we can coordinate with the LGU when they register for business permits, because the certificate of authority which gives an Bambi registered enterprise to enjoy the incentives is not a permit to operate. It's just
right.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
will
but I
just
know
entitle them.
before you can get your business permit, you have to declare.
I think so, Your
I mean,
Honor, with
when
the
you renew
LGU.
your business permit, you have to declare. So, meron kang some form of information. You just have to get it from the LGUs.
I believe it would be with the LGUs, Your Honor, because
We can
for-
ask,
yes.
Senator, we can ask the League of Provinces maybe, if they have any knowledge about that. Yeah. Regarding the question of Senator Gatchalian, may data ba tayo dyan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as far as provinces
Ah.
are concerned, we don't have the database because it's basically with the cities and
Cities.
municipalities.
Okay.
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 But in any case, no, in the absence of data, how did we derive itong 250,000 exemption?
Well, we looked at many factors. No? One is the Bambi law, because we don't want generally taxpayers to be worse off. Currently, the exemptions are as follows. No? You have more or less 100,000 as a minimum wage. Well, in Bicol and ARM, that is as low as 250. In Manila, it's very close to 500. But the average is 100,000. Then each taxpayer is allowed 50,000 personal exemption, so 150. And we assume the maximum of for dependents, 25,000 per dependent. So times 4, 250. So that is basically how we factored in.
The micro businesses, it might be more. You know, for yung mga maliliit na
well,
negosyo. It might be a sari-sari store. If you divide 250, that's about 600 pesos a day. So I think some sari-sari stores will sell more than that.
In that case, Mr. Chair, they are more profitable. So in excess of the 250, they pay an incremental tax.
But how do we now develop the? That's why I'm interested itong Bambi law. How much? Because the Bambi law actually promotes micro businesses. But I'm just curious, what type of sales do they generate? You know? And because I want to also somehow correlate that to the 250 threshold, no? Because we obviously want to promote more micro businesses, no? We want to start more micro businesses, but the 250,000 might be burdensome to them. So that's why I want to know that sales being generated by the Bambi law, and also para malaman natin whether the Bambi law is also delivering what it's supposed to deliver. No?
That, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I cannot answer now. I understand the and micro enterprise registers with the LGU or DTI.
For business
LGU.
permits, they do register with the LGU,
But
but
to
for
be-
business name and BMBE registration,
No,
they-
my point, Carl, is maybe we're penalizing the micro businesses, no, with the 250,000 threshold. And a lot of LGUs actually promote micro businesses. No, may mga livelihood programs, may mga ganitong programs. In fact, they spend so many of their budget to livelihood, which hindi naman natin alam kung saan napupunta. No? So, this is I just want to be very sure with the 250 threshold, no? So that it will not discourage more micro businesses to come in.
Well, Mr. Chair, and Senator, the 250,000 is the exemption threshold. Based on our calculation, to register as a micro enterprise under the Bambi law, your asset must be around at most 3 million. And as I mentioned, the typical return on asset is not more than 10%. Otherwise, that is a profitable business, and therefore should graduate and contribute. So that is why I'm thinking, if the return on asset is 5 to 10% of the 3 million asset that you are supposed to have, then you are within the 250,000 threshold. So for most Bambi enterprise, they need not be worse off. In fact, it is a way to encourage them to graduate. Without our graduated tax system, then we might also, as I think some stakeholders have mentioned, artificially trap them because they want to be exempt, but still they choose so that they can be stuck in that low level. Yes.
Yeah, I think just to move forward, Mr. Chair, I want to seek the assistance of DTI to give us an update on that Bambi law. How many enterprises registered, what are their sales, ano ba yung mga ano nila, ano yung mga type of industries that they went into. We have to make sure that because of this reform, the essence of the Bambi law will not be diminished. As well as, we want to continue to promote micro businesses. Alam ko maraming LGUs yan talagang trabaho nila to promote micro businesses. I'm just afraid that with this threshold, we might not be promoting that mandate. So I think it's more of the DTI responsibility to enlighten this committee.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the figures, at least, well, for now, what we have on hand, the figures we have on hand is that we have about 9,000 registrants with the Bambi. However, as to the sectors that they would be classified in, we will have to go back to our data and provide the figures.
Breakdown na lang ho, and I know mahirap dahil nasa
Yes,
LGUs, but for this purpose, I think we should do our homework, so the decision makers will be enlightened.
Yes, Your Honor. To the extent we can, we will provide the data. Thank you.
Sa Bambi ho, follow up dun kay Senator Win. Is there a graduation process? Kasi it applies to 3 million in assets, but at some point, successful ones will grow. What is the phase out, or is there a phase out of incentives, or is that perpetual enjoyment of incentives?
According to the law, the incentives could be perpetual as long as they belong to that asset size.
But what is the mechanism to, what if the 3 million enterprise grows to become a 10 million enterprise or a 15 million peso enterprise, which happens?
Yeah.
So ano po yung ano dun? That 10 or 15 million enterprise will still be enjoying the exemptions?
Hindi na po.
Pero paano nga in practice, paano nababantayan yung growth nun?
We have database in the DTI, so we are able to track the graduation from micro to small, small to medium. They do, our provincial offices provide us the data. So for each...
yes, but how do they track them? I know that if they provide you the data, how in practice do they see that from 3 million in assets, they have grown to 10 million in assets or 15 million in assets? Is there a reportorial requirement?
Yes po.
Ano po yung reportorial requirement na yun?
Because every now and then, the DTI, in the process of hand-holding those enterprises, they provide various types of assistance, so they are able to track somehow the growth of the enterprises.
That sounds to me like something that's not institutionalized. That's more of a case-to-case basis, no?
Yes.
So is there an institutionalized mechanism to track their growth? Because otherwise, at least legally, parang perpetual yung enjoyment nila. Unless the DTI is on a case-to-case basis able to monitor.
Well,
so walang institutional mechanism.
Okay,
thank you. Yeah, Yusek.
I think, Mr. Chair, that is why similar to the minimum wage, as you rightly mentioned, there's no graduation. People remain stuck. That is why if we combine all of them and have a simpler income tax system, wherein only the increment above 250 will be taxed, I think we'll be able to slowly graduate both the minimum wage and the Bambi.
I think we all agree on that here. You won't hear any. So any other comments? I think the Attorney Enrile is here. So you're the last comment ho dito sa self-employed and professionals. Are there many members of your organization who are self-employed and professionals?
Yes.
You represent the federation, no?
Yes, the federation. But for now, we don't have a comment yet. But we will be definitely submitting a position paper regarding the SMEs because we haven't discussed it yet.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So any other comments before we leave this? There may have been some guests now were not acknowledged. I was just going by the list. I assume those who did not speak will speak for the estate and donors. But before we close the discussion, any other any persons or who would like to organizations would like to comment? No more. I think we still have to do some work here, no, to finalize We'll be working closely with the department and our colleagues here. So if we can take a 5 or 10 minute break, maybe to maybe the BIR and the DOF could get their data, and we will have a faster discussion. No? So we'll 10 minute break, yeah. Samplina na lang. Huwag naman. Okay, thanks. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. Salamat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could resume the meeting, we'll now tackle the lowering of the state tax and the donor's tax, and also please feel free to comment on the pending bills on tax amnesty, estate tax amnesty. So again, can we give the floor to Yusek? I think Yusek Chua gave your bit already on the estate tax. So, BIR, would the BIR care to... well, I think you've given your positions already in the previous hearings, no? So we'll really hear from the practitioner, siguro. Can we hear from... Well, maybe from the Philippine Statistics Office, Attorney Cecilia Misola is here. Hi, ma'am. Could you tell us, ano ba yung comments nyo dito sa measures to lower the rates of the estate tax?
Yes,
and donor's tax also.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For now, the instructions given by the national statistician herself, Dr. Lisa Grace Bersales, is that we shall support the resolution on this unnumbered bill on the amnesty on the estate tax, and we shall provide whatever statistics necessary in the course of the committee hearing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll probably get back to you on you said deaths, number of deaths, etc. Yeah. Sa LRA naman ho, sa Land Registration Authority, Attorney Joseph Dimaiyakan, sir.
So we also support whatever is the resolution of this unnumbered bill. Last February, I think they submitted statistics as to the number of transactions, estate transactions from year from year 2009 up to 2016, and 2 months of I think 2 months of 2017.
Anong nakalagay ho sa datos? I think yung concern from the last hearing, sir, was ilan yung lupa na hindi nailipat, pero namatay na ho yung may-ari, pero nakapangalan pa rin sa kanila. Is there anything in the data between the PSA and the BIR, the DOF, and the LRA which would give us an indication? Ang sinabi sa akin ng staff ko na meron pang lupa na 1901 pa, hindi pa nailipat. 1901 pa daw ho yung namatay pa ho. Nasa pangalan pa ho nung decedent. Yeah. Ito, this is from the Senate Tax Research Office. From 1900, from property or land registered in the year 1900, what does this indicate? 1900 was the date of death?
No, sir. 1900, as of 1900, meron pang 201 active files. Presumed death naman yung may.
Okay, so there are 201 active titles in the name of people who are already dead. Yeah. And 1901, 267, 1902, 366. Tama ba yun? Tama ba yung interpretation natin ng data? Yeah. This is a cumulative list, meaning each year is repeated in the following year. Okay, so hindi siya cumulative, meaning yeah, well, anyway, we'll ask your help to interpret this data, no? Because for 2015, for example, we have 859 active titles. But in previous years, the numbers seem unusually large. So for 2006 or 2008, for example, you have 585,902 active titles. Siguro hindi naman patay lahat yun, di ba? Can you explain the data? Okay po.
Senator, what was submitted to them by our office is only sum of total of transactions, estate transactions, for registered land and unregistered land. But the data with regards to active titles not yet transferred, I think they haven't submitted.
Ano yun dyan? Yung mga estates na sinettle?
Yes.
Ilan po yun?
As of, I think 2 months of 2017, we have 141,567.
Transactions, ho.
Total sum transactions.
Madami din, Okay, thank you. Any other comments, sir?
No more, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Sa Manila City Assessor's Office, Ms. Maria Ana Alfonso. Comment if you have any. Next time we'll also call the treasurer.
We have no data regarding the estate tax. We observe in our office that there's so many tax declaration in the name of dead persons. However,
may estimate mo kayo ng number?
Wala po, sir.
Pero talaga marami ho?
Marami ho. Even now, na nagtatransfer kami, mga titles is 1925, 1965, 1975 titles.
So parang binenta na lang kasi may buyer. Pero dati ayaw i-register dahil...
Ayaw pong i-register kasi mahal yata ang pera ng state tax.
Magbabayad ho kasi sila at wala silang pambayad.
And some of it, NHA properties na awarded sa mga lolo-lolo pa.
Paano yun? May penalties ba yun? Sa unpaid,
kasi wala po. Wala sa
sa inyo, wala, no? Pero once nalaman ng BIR yan, lalagyan ng penalties yan.
Siguro po, sir. Kasi sa amin po, yung at the time of death, ang kinukuha nilang tax declaration.
Yeah. Senator Win.
Ma'am, na-mention nyo yung mga iba yata namatay na, no? Nakapangalan to dun sa deceased. Sino ho nagbabayad nung amilyar?
Mga anak po. Nagbabayad naman po ng tax.
And tinatanggap ng local. Ginagawa rin namin yan, no, sa Valenzuela, but I just wanna confirm kung ginagawa rin ng ibang LGU because definitely that's also another loophole, Mr. Chair, dahil even though the beneficial owner wala na, pero nagbabayad yung relatives o whoever, nagiging parang palusot rin no? And when the time comes na nabenta na, saka magbabayad na lang ng penalties sa BIR, no? But what I'm saying lang is maybe in a different session, but that's also another loophole while people are encouraged to not to transfer, no? At dahil tinatanggap din ng mga LGUs kahit hindi na yung beneficial owner ang nagbabayad, no? Or registered owner ang nagbabayad, no?
So, tama ho si Senator Win, no? Palagay ko tama kasi wala namang local government na tumatanggi ng pera, no? Kung may magsabing babayad din, kahit sa pangalan pa ni Mang Kapoy yan, tatanggapin ho ninyo, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Sir, minsan doble-doble nga Di ba? May nangyari sa amin, isang tax declaration, dalawang nagbayad. Tinanggap rin ng local government.
Okay. On the point of Senator Win earlier dun sa self-employed, yung mga, ano experience nyo sa Bambi? May experience ba kayo sa registration ng Bambi? Kasi lahat yan kailangan ng local government permit, business permit, di ba? Hindi mo ba sa inyo?
Wala po sa...
hindi na kumukuha ng business permit?
Sa business permit po, sa Office of the Mayor po yun. Hindi po sa Assessor's Office.
I see. So wala kayong kinalaman dun?
Wala ho.
Would you know if they put their income there?
Ang alam ko po, pag mag-file ka, first time mo mag-file ng business permit, you have to put your capital income. Capital.
Pero pag renewal?
Pag renewal, ilalagay mo pa rin ho, sir, yung gross income.
Okay. For the past year? For the past year. Okay. Salamat ho. Thank you. Sir Eddie Yap from Phoenix. I think you wanted to comment
on the estate tax.
Honors and amnesty ho.
Amnesty, yes, we're in favor of that. Although we've stated our position that the amnesty should come after tax reform, not before. Thank you.
That's it? That's your stand up?
Yeah, that's our position.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. League of Provinces, Ms. Angelica Sanchez, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. The League of Provinces support the tax reform program. However, we have a little, we have some reservations here insofar as how this tax reform, especially the amnesty and the estate tax, is going to affect the whole tax collections kasi po yung 40% of the national internal revenue is allocated for IRA. So, ang amin lang pong reservations here is mainly on the IRA eventually. How if the national income
Division
is
of the
going down.
IRA. The
Yes
division,
po.
but that's the subject of a case in the Supreme Court, di ba?
Yes po. No, I mean, the ano talaga, the whole amount, kasi yung 40% nga po is for IRA.
Yes.
So baka po bumaba ang IRA eventually when we implement the tax reforms, especially the
Ba't
amnesty. Baka lang po, yun yung major,
Hindi,
yung
hindi.
basic
No, it's
apprehension
not
po
going to go
dyan.
down. I think
Yes
we're
po.
sure it's not going, pretty sure it's not going to go down.
So, but otherwise, it's we don't have any objections. Yun lang po talaga.
Okay. Thank you. Team up, Attorney Lim.
In terms of the estate tax amnesty, we are also the same with Phoenix, that we support the tax amnesty, but we hope that it will come after the tax reform.
Can we be clear on that? Why after? It will come. It will be simultaneous with the tax reform. Meaning, as we lower the rates, it's also we'll also file the bill, or as Senator Drilon said, maybe incorporate it already in the tax package that there's an amnesty.
All right. On the reduction of the estate tax and donors tax, we support it as well. Just one very minor administrative provision on estate tax. I think it wasn't included, but since we're already amending the estate tax provisions, on the requirement for a statement of a duly certified public account, or a CPA, depending on the gross value, we propose that it would also be pegged at 3 million, because so to be aligned with the general proposal that for purposes of getting the audited financial statements, the gross sales or gross receipts would be 3 million annual. So in terms of the Section 90, on the requirement for a statement for a certified public accountant, it also be pegged at 3 million. On the donors tax, specifically on Section 100, we fully support that suggestion, or that the bill of Senator Pimentel on the amendment of Section 100, because at least now bona fide sales transactions would not be covered anymore by that deemed donation provision, which is basically what is being implemented by the BIR. Although in the past, even if that was, because it was based on Section 100, Revenue Regulation 6-2008, and that Section 100 was also patterned after the tax code in the US, although the implementing regulations, I think we did not look into it, because the implementing regulations in the US specifically say that the bona fide sales transactions, or those done in the ordinary course of business, should not be covered by the deemed donation provision. So we fully support that. So regardless of whether the donors tax is now reduced to 6%, I think it's not the rate, not just the rate that we're talking about, but it's really the principle on what that Section 100 is all about.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, since you're now entertaining comments on other aspects of the estate tax,
yes.
May I resume my?
I thought you were finished. That's why we gave you the floor. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, on the estate tax, the objective, we are very much in favor of the reduction, because the objective is to lighten the tax burden in order to encourage voluntary compliance. But as we know, in the computation of the estate tax, there are two factors. One is the tax rate, and the other one is the tax base, which is the valuation of the asset. Now, while the tax rate will be fixed down to 6%, the tax base is movable, because it is subject to periodic adjustment by the BIR through the zonal value. Now, we submit that the zonal value for estate tax purposes, as applied to estate assets, is not appropriate, because zonal values are based on commercial transactions for profit. While in the case of transfers, mortis causa, they are involuntary transfers, not for profit, by requirement of law. Therefore, we submit that first is that the family home, the primary home, should be excluded from the gross estate. Now, if it will not be excluded, the 3 million pesos exemption is arbitrary and discriminatory. In order to cure that, we would
Ano? The
suggest
3 million? Yung proposed 3 million exemption?
3 million exemption for the family home.
Discriminatory against the rich. Huh?
Parang ganun, no, Mr. Chairman. Ngayon, so in order to cure that, we would like to suggest that if the primary home will be retained in the gross estate, the valuation should not be based entirely on the zonal value. And we should adopt the practice of the LGUs wherein an assessment level is assigned to the zonal value. For instance, if the assessment level at the LGU is 20% of the assessed value, therefore, the primary home for estate tax purposes should be assessed at, say, 20% of the zonal value, because they are not commercial transactions. They are compulsory transfers by operation of law. Mr. Chairman, that's about it. Yes. Thank you. Opo.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Yap. Okay, it's interesting comments, no? Kasi some jurisdictions nga choose to exempt the family home in full and also adopt some kind of assessment level. The most common I've seen is for agricultural land. There is so maybe we should look at that also and see how, maybe it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, no? Attorney Riego?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, regarding the coverage of the estate tax amnesty under House Bill 4814. It says that the coverage will be any unpaid taxes as of December 31, 2016. So that means only persons who died on or before June 30, 2016 will be covered.
To adjust that because we will adjust it basically to us. Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever we pass it, we'll adjust the date as to
Okay.
depending on how long we
For the
take.
clarification.
We're not tied to that date if that's your concern.
And then
no?
my other question would be, what happens when a person died actually, when there's no zonal valuation yet? What will be the value that will be used to determine the net estate?
What cases would that be? I'm curious.
Anybody who died actually before 1930s, 1950s.
Okay.
I think the earliest zonal valuation from the BIR posted in the website is in the 1970s. That's what I recall.
Okay, we did not consider that. Maybe the BIR or the DOF have a view on that. Kung wala pang zonal values, paano yung basis?
Actually, that's very correct, Mr. Chair. That is why originally the package 3 is really about the full property taxation.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to find a proxy for that. No?
Yes.
We'll just maybe you can have suggestions. We'll welcome them. No, the committee did not consider that possibility that someone who died in 1930 has not yet filed this estate tax. Yeah, no, it's possible. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, considering all these lands and so maybe even 1900. No, so talagang there has to be a basis. Baka may suggestions si DepCom. May idea ho kayo? Anong market value or
as long as there is a tax declaration, Mr. Chair, they have the value also.
Basta may tax declaration. Paano kung wala ho?
Yan kung wala.
Oh.
Ayun ang problema.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I think the tax declaration serves as the purpose. For purpose, a tax declaration should be the one used, especially for the older. If they cannot produce a tax declaration, I'm not sure about their claims to the property.
Ownership of the property.
Okay. Are you satisfied by that answer? Hindi kasi iba torrents title lang di ba? Or, yeah, no tax declaration siguro. Oh. And then the amnesty is even for local government taxes, di ba? In theory, so. Anyway, we'll put our heads together and come up with something. No?
And I'll just go back to my question earlier. What's the reason behind the slight increase in the standard deduction of 1 million to 1.225 when you're taking away 200,000 limit for funeral expense and 500,000 limit for medical expenses? That figure of 1 million actually did not move in the last 20 years. So why only 1.225 now?
You know, our proposal, Where's my proposal?
You wrote it.
Mr. Chair, in the DOF proposal, because we have reduced the rate significantly to 6%, we wanted to simplify further the way we compute the net estate. So actually, we removed the funeral, the medical, we increased the family home because that is typically the biggest portion of the estate. And then we incorporated a slight increase on the standard deduction because in our discussion with the staff of Senate President Pimentel, we tried to estimate what would be a typical funeral expense. So that is one of the reason, actually the main reason why that was increased. We think the 200 funeral expense will have to be adjusted somehow.
So that will not be taken away. It will be increased in fact.
Well, the standard deduction from 1 million will be 1,250,000, but the funeral and medical, we zeroed it out. And the family home from 1 million, we increased to 3 million, and in the Senate version, every 5 years adjusted for inflation. Precisely because we thought that the computation and deductions are going to be more tedious, but since we have a much lower estate tax rate, that should compensate the concern that this is very burdensome.
Hindi ba a lot of time is expended dun sa expenses, going through the expenses?
That is correct. That is why
we just give one deduction na lang.
Yes,
uniform deduction.
Actually, Mr. Chair, the DOF and the Senate
family home and medical expenses and everything.
Yes. That's why, Mr. Chair, the DOF and Senate version, we zeroed the funeral and medical, and then increase the family and the standard deduction. So there will be only 2 deductions. The
Senate version, magkano? How much are you entitled to deduct?
Both the DOF and the Senate, 1,250,000 standard deduction.
Plus 3.
Plus 3 million for the family home.
4.25.
Yes.
So why don't you just make one of like 4.5 or 4 million?
That would be
simple na lang. Wala nang kalkalan ng resibo, di ba?
That would be possible also.
What does the accountant say? Is that better or does that give you less work? Pero baka mawalan sila ng trabaho. Okay, are you finished, Attorney Diego?
Just one last observation, Mr. Chairman. Since the donor's tax will be reduced to 6%, so to make it at par with the 6% capital gains tax. But I think what's going to happen, every transaction will now, as a mode of transfer, will gravitate to donor's tax because at least you don't have to pay the DST of 1.5% if it's a donation of real property rather than sale.
Wala bang DST ang donors?
Wala po.
But estate and capital gains have?
Estate wala rin po. Yun pong capital gains tax meron with documentary.
So why do you say it will gravitate towards? Kasi hindi naman pwede mamatay lagi, no?
And it's going to be cheaper actually to donate now rather than sell it because you don't have to pay the 1.5% documentary stamp tax.
Yeah. Any comment on that? That's an interesting point. Nagtuturuan kayo dyan.
Probably there will be baka yung gravitating towards donors, baka magka-ano rin yan, on the basis na hindi siya magiging business expense noong buyer pagka donor siya. So in the end, di ba yung opportunity mo to deduct that?
If you're talking about capital gains tax, it's actually a tax on the presumed gain, right? So whatever is the selling price or the market value, zonal value, or market value per tax declaration, that's 6% of that amount. So you actually do not enjoy the cost benefit, yung benefit ng cost, right? So people will actually prefer to donate rather than sell.
Issue because the reason for going to 6 is para equal lahat, no? But it seems that it's not all equal pala. So something you have to look at, no? Yeah, maybe we can look at that further. Thanks for that, raising that, Attorney Rego. Attorney Cabrera? Yeah.
Yes.
focus on the provision in the proposed amendment, Mr. Chair. This is the provision in the tax code that's capable of killing the survivors of the deceased. This is the one that does not allow you to withdraw the balance at the bank until you show a certificate that you paid all your estate taxes. Now that has, there's a proposed amendment now that if you have not secured that certificate that you paid the taxes, that you be allowed to withdraw up to 500,000 pesos, provided you get the approval of the commissioner. So parang ganun pa rin po, na you're getting something from the bureau, and you still would not be able to withdraw that in practice. My proposal, Mr. Chair, is quite simple. If the estate taxes has been, will be reduced to 6%, then I would just propose that if the debt is known to the bank and the heirs are trying to withdraw the money, just withhold the 6% estate tax. And then that estate tax that will allow them to withdraw all the money, you know, because anyway, it has been subjected to 6% anyway, and then they can claim that as credit when they prepare their estate tax return for all the properties of the deceased. So that will remove discretion on the part of the BIR, and that will, you know, give the bank a free hand in releasing the money.
Will withhold the bank? The bank will
withhold
6%.
Yes, so that you won't need to do this antedated withdrawal slip, etc. You know, it simplifies the process. Just withhold, and then the bill gets its money.
The obituary. You will delay the obituary.
Yes, but this time the bank gets everything. Huh?
But seriously, how will the bank know what is 6% though of?
No, just on the cash.
Just on the
just on the cash.
Okay.
But, and for sure there may be liability, so that may not be. So that's just a tax credit when the taxpayer or the estate prepares the estate tax return.
But playing devil's advocate, if you're the government, what if there are the indebtedness of the estate is much bigger than the 6% of the cash? There's no security for that, because that's the purpose of the withholding the cash, diba?
If you're the government, then you have the money, then the heirs filing the return can claim that back, hopefully. You know, but this is a way for the heirs to get the money now, you know, without being subjected to any delay and issues for that matter. So that's for that estate tax. On the donors tax, Mr. Chair, the provision touched upon by Attorney Malulim on the bona fide sales transaction that is sufficient to exempt from donors tax, the difference between the reasonable compensation or consideration for the property that was sold. So my thinking there is that I think the problem with the DOF is that they do not agree with the bona fide sale transaction. I would just add bona fide sale transaction between third parties. So if it's a third-party sale, let's not doubt that that's a bona fide sales transaction. That is the only price at which the parties are willing to enter into that transaction. If it's a related party transaction, presumptively that is not a bona fide sales transaction, except if the sale happened in a public auction or bidding. Then even sales between related parties.
What's the definition again of related party? How much? What's percentage of ownership?
It's a rule of thumb, Mr. Chair, but there was a provision before that 20% can be a related party. But if you're going to use accounting rules, if there's influence that can be exerted, that's a related party. Common ownership and then influence that can be exerted.
Is it the same rule for transfer pricing? Do you follow the same
for
rules
transfer pricing
parties?
Yes, so the BIR has this. And so if you're a related party, there can be doubt on whether it's bona fide or not. But if it's a third party, please don't doubt, because we cannot tell people to enter into an 80,000 transaction and say you should make that 200. That's the price that they agreed upon. That's a third party sale. So don't touch that. Only related parties, unless public bidding or auction. And the third, Mr. Chair, is on the estate tax amnesty. In one of the House bills, I think there was one qualification about fraud not being involved. I think it's irrelevant whether fraud was involved or not when certain estate is not declared, because 100% non-declaration can be equivalent to fraud. In fact, in the tax code, only 30% is fraud. So let's
let's relax it so that, you know, we can collect and then we can start the development of these properties. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, parang ano na, superfluous na yung double fraud, parang ganun. Double dead, double fraud, parang ganun. Okay. Any other comments? Attorney Sofia Ko of the Jerry Ross Foundation. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we don't have comments for now, but we would like to reserve our right to file a position paper later
You
on.
prefer the 20% to the 6%.
Sorry.
You prefer the 20% to the 6%.
No, we prefer the 6%. But
Okay, just kidding. Thank you. Mr. Norman Agustin of the Lingap Pangkabataan. Nakalis na. Anybody else who would like to comment? Senator Gatchalian? If there, Mr. Bu of NTRC.
On state tax amnesty, the proposal under SB 293 is based on the basic estate tax, excluding the incremental penalties such as fines, interest, and charges. So, because the basic computation of basic estate tax needs substantiation, so if that is the basis for the estate tax amnesty, there might be difficulty in computing the basic estate tax because of, say, non-availability of records or data or value of, like the one cited by Attorney Riego. So it's difficult to determine or to compute the basic estate tax. So we might reconsider that as the basis for estate tax amnesty.
Anong suggestion niyo po?
We can consider the gross estate as basis for the tax amnesty. And
let's just give us your submissions in writing, just the same with Attorney Liego regarding your question about the previous to zonal values, no?
We have already, I think we have already submitted our detailed comments on the bill.
Thank you. In that case,
Thank
any other
you,
comments?
Mr. Chair.
Wala na po?
The period. Because 1 year might be too long and it will not give a sense of urgency to the delinquent taxpayers because
Suggestion niyo po?
it be short.
1 month. 1 month.
No, na.
1 day.
Because the last amnesty was 6 months. The under 9480.
Matagal na yan.
Ayun, 2007 tax
2007.
amnesty.
Ilan ang nag-avail nun? No. That's a general tax amnesty, no? That's not only estate tax, no?
Yes.
General amnesty ho yun?
Yeah, legislative, general, Your Honor.
Ilan ang estates na nag-avail nun? I'm curious.
734.
Estates?
Yeah.
In 2000?
2005 and prior years.
So, ilan ang parties na nag-avail in general?
Total is 24,304. 304.
Okay. Sige, that's important data. Paki-furnish na lang po sa atin. How much was the BIR able to raise from that amnesty?
It's 7.16 billion po.
May estimates ho tayo how much we can raise from this lowering, the amnesty rather? Because that was a general amnesty, no? So.
Pero I have a particular, for estate alone, they have a payment of 299 million po, sir.
Yung 734? Yeah. But there was no lowering of estate tax then, no? Ito, lower, so mas attractive siya, theoretically, no?
Ulitin ko lang, no? In 2005, ang nag-avail is 24,000.
24,304 taxpayers.
That yielded how much?
Yielded 7.16 billion pesos.
Kasi the general amnesty yun.
All other taxes kasama.
Income tax, ganun.
Estate. Ang estate lang is 734 taxpayers.
Paying 299 million.
299.
734
po.
34
estates.
Estates and
Yeah.
then
And paid 299,000. Now million.
99 million.
Since we're on the topic, Commissioner, ano yung average deduction claim ng mga, anong average total ng mga deductions claim? Meron ba tayo? I realize it's something we have to compute probably, no? Pero baka meron kayo.
We need to validate, Mr.
Sige.
Chair, your data.
Yusek Carl, did it come up, did it ever
Yes.
crop up yung average deductions claimed by an estate?
Well, currently, Mr. Chair, the deductions are very limited. So you have the 1 million family home, 1 million standard, the 200 funeral, and the 500.
I think it would be helpful if we knew how much, what's the average amount of deductions, total deductions claimed by an estate.
Yes.
We have an idea
We will,
of...
request from BIR.
Any comments of the parties of the body for the period? What is the optimal period for I think 6 months is suggested by NTRC. 1 year is what's in the bill now.
Months was the period during the last.
6 months was the period rather. So, but you feel it's a good, it's better than 1 year. It's 6 months counted from which time? From the time of publication, of entry into force of the law? Yeah. Okay. Any other issues that anyone would like to? Yeah, Attorney Enrile. Yeah.
Yes, I'd just like to ask, the 200,000 exemption for the estate tax was purposely omitted because I believe the donor's tax retained the 100,000 and below exemption.
100,000 for what? No,
For
that's
estate
yung
tax.
What are we referring to? We have a deduction of 1.25 million proposed now in lieu of
okay.
the 1 million.
Okay, because previously the bracket was, you may bracket, the 200,000.
No, now it's
yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We are now using, Mr. Chair, the flat rate. So, and then the thresholds have been increased.
Yeah. Also, maybe last point. This is the documentary requirements of the BIR, no? For estates. There are 22 requirements. Notice of death, certified true copy, deed of extrajudicial settlement of the estate, court orders for judicial settlements, affidavit of self-adjudication, certified true copy of the transfer, condominium certificate, latest tax deck, certificate of no improvement, certificate of deposit, photocopy of certificate of registration of vehicles, photocopy of certificate of stocks, proof of valuation of shares, proof of valuation of other types of personal property. Baka pwede natin pag-aralan, Commissioner, ano yung pwedeng tanggalin na rito pagka napasa tong streamline natin, para yung gusto nga ni Senator Win na baka online pwede na di ba? Mas maganda. I don't think it's only for the taxpayers' benefit, it's also for the benefit of the government because if the government can receive money at the soonest possible time, di ba? Nakakatulong naman sa gobyerno yun. Yeah, Attorney.
Sir, if I may. Actually, sir, for on-net transactions, one-time transactions, no, like estate tax and donors tax, lahat po kasi dapat po nagpo-file na po through EBIR forms. However po, nung nag-start po yung administration, sinuspend po yung mandatory na implementation of this kasi po nagrereklamo po yung mga taxpayers na hindi po sila makapag e-file. Ayun po. So,
because what's the reason for an inability to file? Baka naman because of
sabi po nila
server. Yun nga, I hear that a lot also.
system.
Madalas ko rin naririnig yan actually.
Or minsan po, very difficult, sa totoo lang po. Kasi po nag-try din po ako mag-file through EBIR forms ng estate tax nung uncle ko po. Pag fill up nyo nga po siya, medyo tedious. So baka po naging impatient din po yung taxpayers in filling up yung forms.
Okay.
Actually, at the time when the filing deadline was there, we had a problem with this because we migrated from the from the original service to the DICT. So there was a problem on the migration. So it
take it up with the DICT how they can assist you dun sa.
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
Flag that. Kasi nakakausap naman natin sila. Yeah, but that's important yung pag-streamline ho nito. Tapos may sinabi na sa akin na isang sa experience nila, you require a certified copy of the zonal value from a locality. Let's say you're paying in San Juan. You require, if the property is in Laguna, you require a certified copy from them of the zonal values. Sabi sa akin, yung zonal values nandun naman sa website ninyo yun. So maybe yung ganun, wag na natin i-require yung ganun.
We can remove that.
Pwede na siguro, no? Okay. All right. So any other comments from the body? Senator Erwin, no more? Okay, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Thank you very much. I think yung estate and donors and amnesty, medyo, I think we're getting there, no? But sa professionals, we'll have to discuss a little bit more. So thank you very much, Yusek, sa lahat po. Thank you, maraming salamat po.